so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. First we're going to approve the consent agenda with previous minutes and the policies for a second reading. And then there are some policies that are a first reading. So why don't we start with the previous minutes? And if you take a look at those, do we have a motion to accept those?
I make a motion to accept.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, then let's do the policies for the second reading, which is the professional learning, family and medical leave, board commitment to non-discrimination, alcohol and drug-free workplace, health insurance portability and accountability acts. Any comments or feedback on those?
Motion.
Okay, we got a motion, all in favor? Aye. Okay, policies first reading. We have pets, which did receive some feedback last night at the SU meeting. Grants, conflict of interest employees, financial management and general financial accountability, transportation of students and reports. No, sorry, not and reports. Transportation of students, period. Any feedback on those policies?
What was the discussion?
The discussion was from Rick, the fact that it references vaccinations on the pets, but didn't specify which vaccinations they should probably have to enter a building. And then we talked about, I know, it's good to have a bet on the board. And he talked about how rabies is the typical one that could be transported between pets and people, so we specified rabies.
Right. Is it rabies for mammals? Because like birds, you don't have a rabies shot too.
No, birds don't get rabies.
Right.
So,
Just says rabies.
oh, it says vaccinations such as, I guess.
Okay. And we just know that if it is an animal that gets rabies, we don't have to worry about it.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Are there other exceptions? But this is, I probably should know this.
Like
Rick, but I am
reptiles, they
not.
don't get rabies. It's only mammals that get rabies, right?
Yeah, so,
Yes, I know, we're intrigued.
I mean, so it depends on what, so reptiles carry a bunch of things that you need to worry about, like salmonella.
Salmonella, yeah.
Is the biggest one, like turtles and that kind of stuff are notorious for carrying salmonella. There's no vaccine for that in reptiles, at least that I'm aware of. But as far as vaccination goes, rabies is the one that's traditionally the state regulates. You know, so animals going to shows, fairs, all that kind of stuff are required to have rabies vaccine.
So would the clause say rabies for all mammals? Is that the category? Because I know what Beth is saying. Some principal is going to be giving this task, and they're not going to know that birds or reptiles don't get rabies shots, and so
Okay.
they're going to ask a silly question, and then they're going to feel stupid for asking it.
Right.
So I don't know the answer. So if an animal, so there are mammals that get rabies, but there's no approved rabies vaccine for them?
Oh,
That's not helpful.
And
Are
that's
they
so,
likely to be brought into a school?
well, you don't know. So there's been lots of bad incidences of fairs and stuff, having pretty healthy looking animals show up and then all of a sudden come down with a case of rabies at a fair, and people end up having to get prophylactic rabies shots because of it. And again, for the most part, pets in my mind are dogs, cats, that kind of stuff, so.
well, I was gonna say, because sometimes I remember in like elementary school, you'd bring in like, right, if you're doing some kind of unit, and then it's like gerbil, right?
Yeah.
Can I bring in my rabbit, right?
I've had the Calico schools that have been at Enosburg for fundraising, so.
Exactly.
That's right.
Kiss the goat.
So what's
So I don't know,
the,
maybe it's actually it might be a little bit broader discussion than just vaccination of the animals, It might be more disease prevention than it is.
Because if you just say vaccinations and they've been vaccinated for this, but not
So
that.
what if we said the appropriate vaccinations?
Yeah.
And then if there was a question from the administrator, they could call and say, they gave me a vaccination for this, is that appropriate for? They are all just gonna call you. And say,
And then you can get your consultant fee.
It's true. Amy went to
Conflict of interest, though.
I think that's fine.
Sure it
okay.
does.
So instead of saying rabies, say appropriate vaccinations?
Yes.
Okay, any other comments or suggestions around the policy first readings of those policies?
Nope, I'll make a
Okay,
motion.
we have a motion, all in favor?
No,
Perfect. Okay. So at this point, it's the agenda preview and prioritization. And so here's how we're gonna shift the agenda. I think we're gonna start with the school spotlight, then we'll go to the public comment, and then we will go to Morgan. And then, principal reports. Although it says Michelle's on this agenda.
It's a
that's-
mistake.
It's a mistake, okay. Then we're gonna go to the principals, and then superintendent, and then board business. Okay? So Nate, if you wanna lead us into the spotlight?
Sure. Really, I thought the best way to do that is to bring in two students, so I'm gonna really turn it over to them in just a minute. But before I do that, to Bree and Nick, I just wanna kind of highlight what we do at Colala Career Center. We have a strong foundation, or we have a sign in my office that says we make common sense, common practice. And I believe that tech centers are still one of the last bastions where common sense prevails. So we're really proud of that. We have, as you know, we have 7 programs, and what we do in all of our programs is we try to teach the 3 areas: the technical skills of the program, the academic skills needed in that program in the future, and the employability skills. And that's probably the biggest thing that we do is the employability skills, from dependability, self-direction, communication, teamwork, problem solving, and attitude, and those kind of piggyback right on the transferable skills that both schools have. Some of the things I just want to highlight that you get out of Colala Career Center. All of our programs have what's called IRCs, or Industrial Recognized Credentials, that are credentials that you can take with you that put you ahead of the game when it comes to getting an early job. So whether that's in medical careers, getting your LNA, or if it's being part of construction and forestry and being OSHA 10 certified, if it's being in automotive, or you have some ASC certifications, lift certifications, and Vermont state inspections. So I believe you're able to go right to a place and be certified to give oil changes and do state inspections. So and most, if not all of those, are done with an outside agency. So it's not our teachers checking that off. It's the Vermont Department of Transportation coming in and testing our kids, or the Vermont Board of Nursing coming in and doing the licensed nursing assistant. So all of our students have those opportunities, and we have great success in doing that. We also have a very strong work-based learning program, a co-op program under Sarah Downs, and she has connections all around Franklin County. I think you're actually going to Burlington now recently?
After this job, yeah.
So we'll talk about that, but each co-op experience, Sarah Downs works tirelessly with the employers about what the learning goals are, and do a lot of that learning as a senior outside of the classroom. We also have a lot of our programs either have embedded college credits or dual enrollment credits, which is different than dual enrollment credits that you can get from school. So a high school student can earn 6 college credits, take 2 free classes as a high school student, and then tech centers have additional college credits either embedded or available to them. Those are called fast forward tickets. So for example, in medical careers, this year students will have 6 college credits. Next year they're going to be able to earn 9. So that'll be human biology, nutrition, and medical terminology on top of their LNA. So you could potentially start your college career with 15 credits going into your first year. And that's because our teacher's certified to teach that within the class. Same thing with business. forestry, some schools you need to have a master's to teach the college level, so sometimes it's just an articulation agreement, which is if you come to VTC, you don't have to take these 2 classes because you are here. Construction, auto, all have those articulation agreements with colleges from Maine Community College to Paul Smith to VTC. And then the last thing that I want to highlight is each one of our programs has what's called CTSO, which is Career and Tech Student Organizations. And so the 3 that we have are DECA, FFA, and Skills USA. And so if you've kind of seen that I've asked for money in various times, our FFA students have done very well. 8 of them went out to Indianapolis for nationals for 7 days. Skills USA winners have gone to Louisville, and DECA have, did you guys go anywhere?
No, we could have, but we didn't.
Yeah. So, so those are some of the opportunities that they have. And then the last thing is just our outcomes. One of the things that I think tech centers do that I wish all schools would do is keep track of their kids after graduation. So we have to do a report for the state. Where are students 6 months after graduation, and where are they 3 years after graduation? And our percentages of where they go has varied. We're always right around 35 to 45% of our students go on to jobs that are directly related to the field that they were in at Cold Hollow, and it varies anywhere from like 30 to 52% that have gone on to college. The one stat that I'm very proud of is the students that do go on to college that are from the tech center tend to stay in college. That percentage, I don't have that exact percentage for Enosburg and Richford, but statewide, if they've attended a tech center and they're in college, that completion rate is much higher than if they did not. And I think that's, in Vermont's got a weird relationship there anyway, because we have like a 90-something% graduation rate, but our college completion rate is not the same. So, so those stats are just interesting. But I do want to turn it over to Marie and Nick. They're going to just tell their story of how they, where they were, how they got to Cold Hollow, what that did for them, and where they are now. So, and then you guys can just ask me questions. So, Nick, I know you've been working all day, so let's start with you.
Thanks. All right. So before Cold Hollow, in my 10th grade, wasn't a very good student at all. Like, got in a lot of trouble, didn't have good grades, and that affected me now. So I ended up being like 27 out of 32 in my class, and that's just not nothing to be proud of. But I didn't really like going to school every day because I was just going to go there and do stuff that didn't really help me figure out what I wanted to do in life. And then when I started going to Cold Hollow, it was a toss-up between forestry and construction, and a family member of mine kind of leaned me towards construction, so I went there, and after a little while I realized how fun it was, and I was like, hey, that'd be pretty cool to do like as a job. Like, I'm having fun just doing it at school, so I can't imagine why it wouldn't be fun as a job. And so I worked really hard my 11th grade year, and I had the opportunity to go to Skills USA. And I finished 4th out of the state with seniors. So I got 1st out of all the juniors, so I'm going back again this year, hopefully take home 1st place. That'd be pretty cool. And I pretty much from 9th grade up, I never really wanted to go to college until I worked for SD Ireland over the summer. I was working anywhere from 65 to 75 hours a week, driving an hour and a half each way, and that just got old, just being the lonely on the totem pole. So I figured I'd go to college and, well, try to go to college and get a little kickstart on the career. So I applied to VTC, and I'm going to be going there for 4 years of construction management to get my bachelor's, and hopefully that'll start me off in a good position. And so pretty much what Cold Hollow's done to me is help me figure out what I want to do after school, get a very clear image of what I want to be, and it's helped me design my future to how I'm going to get to where I want to be.
Very well said.
Right.
Yeah, that was great. Good job.
My story is a little different. I am a freshman at Northern Vermont University Johnson this year. I was in the business program at Cold Hollow. My junior year, I was going to be an accountant. That's what I was gonna do the rest of my life. I knew that's what I wanted to do. It was perfect for me, because I was good at math. But throughout the course, I learned that just because I was good at something doesn't mean I like to do it. And a job that you have for the rest of your life, you have to enjoy doing it, or else it's not going to be a passion, and you're not going to do it to your greatest attempt. So I got the opportunity to shadow Stephanie Maishi, who is an accountant, and the whole time I was like, this isn't for me. I have no idea what she's talking about. I'm bored. I don't get it. And I can't imagine sitting here doing this every day for the rest of my life. And so then I did some more career exploration, and I figured out that I love working with kids. That's what I love. And because of Cold Hollow, my senior year, I got the opportunity to co-op at the Enosburg Elementary School. Like, a lot of hours. I got 40 more hours than I needed for the college class that's embedded for our work study in business. And I loved it there. And to this day, like just this week and tomorrow, I'm working there subbing as the librarian and doing whatever they want me to do. So because of my co-op, I got a foot in the door to be able to stub while I'm still in college. Cold Hollow, and I also wasn't gonna go to college until until Mrs. Willie, or Mrs. Marcotte, as she is now, told me that I had a lot of potential, and I needed to believe in myself more than I did. Because I was gonna go to CCV, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I wanted to do more. And so I'm on the president's list at Johnson this year, and I'm doing really well because I went to Cold Hall and figured out what I was passionate about.
Very nice.
I didn't pay them anything.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, the mission of Cold Hollow is try to get kids where they want to go and just figure that out. So I don't know if you guys have any questions for them or.
I don't have any questions, but I think it's really interesting that both of you, which I would agree with, is that sometimes finding out what you want to do is finding out what you don't want to do, right? And so being able, like when you said I came to school every day and this is not what I want to do, or you going to the accountants and saying I don't want to do this, and that sometimes gives you a path, and to have a school like Cold Hollow to actually give you an opportunity to maybe find out is there something different. That's pretty impressive. So well done. Yeah.
And I was in DECA.
Yeah.
I did good, but not that great, like I didn't win. And that's another thing that I realized business is not for me. So being a part of DECA was good for me, it was a good experience, but it also helped me realize that that wasn't the place for me.
Right.
Okay. Last thing I'll do is I'm just going to, as you know, there's been a lot of talk about proficiencies and grading and reporting. One of the things that we've done a little bit different because there's some constraints in Power School, and we fit into the same mold as Richford and Enosburg, and they have classes that are, an hour, and we have 2.5 hours, so we tend to do a little bit more at times, more technical stuff. So here's just a sample of what we're trying to do. It's a work in progress, but it's each of our programs. So this is some do it for a year. Most of it are just the marking period. So these are our learning goals, or the things that get done in class that we report on. So students next week will get this report sent home. Just a snapshot of where they are with some of the skills that we want them to know. So we can just kind of take a look at this. This is then used to, the student does this, the teacher does this, they have the conversation, and that agreed upon grade becomes the course grade for the reporting standards in Power School. So it's just another way that we can communicate kind of all the things that we do throughout the marking period. Just to kind of set, that won't clog up the Power School system, so it's going to pass that right out. I think that's it, unless you guys have, questions for.
Do you have any questions, comments? No, thank you so much.
Yeah,
And
nice
we won't-
job.
Yeah, that's good. And we won't keep you. You don't have to stick around. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
That was very cool.
Okay. So now we're going to move to the public portion, the public comment portion. So I'm going to tell you how this is going to go, okay? So we have about 10 to 15 minutes of which you're going to share your thoughts and concerns with us. So that's 10 to 15 minutes, and I see there's a bunch of you. So do you all intend on speaking, or just some of you? Okay, just to figure out about how much time. And my vice chair's going to just keep time so we can figure that out. So in light of some potential sensitive information, confidential information, we're going to go into executive session. And so that way the camera's going to be turned off and then you can speak to the board.
I would also recommend the only principal that we need to stay is Beth.
Is Beth. Okay, so then you folks can step out. So do I have a motion to go in executive?
I'll make the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. Now, let's move on to Morgan.
There are still no draft audits to share with you.
Okay.
I've been told by the auditors that they will be coming sometime this week. I've heard that before. Hopefully by our next meeting we'll have them.
Okay.
Again, these are for the districts that, as of December 31st, were no longer operating. We did get the SU audit, and that has been finalized, and I think I sent it to everyone, even if you're not on the SU. I sent you a financial report by email, I think it was yesterday. I won't go into depth yet, because I know you're probably more focused on the budget for next year. The big changes are I'm anticipating more tuition revenue this year, which is a nice change from previous years. So got more kids coming from tuition towns than we budgeted for. I've gone through and I've made some tweaks primarily around salaries and benefits and out of district placements. So you'll see some movement on the lines, especially around the direct instruction for each school. And then one other big move is at the Richford High School. If you look at the plant line, so I'm on page 2 of your report if you have it in front of you, about halfway down, you'll see that in that last column, which is what I'm anticipating we'll spend by the end of the year, it's significantly higher than what we budgeted, and that's because of the Windows project that we started the year before. We had gone forward without a financing plan for that. We pushed as much of that into the prior year as we could, and this is the remainder of that bill. And I think Kevin probably remembers, and Pam from the Richford board, from the time we got the quote, quotes were significantly higher than we had expected.
Okay.
So at this point, I don't have any concerns on the budget. We do not have your final tuition rates for last year. I've seen some draft numbers of those, and I think when we get a final rate, we're going to be sending out some pretty hefty bills to your sending towns. So that'll be more cash coming in this budget year, if those towns are able to pay it. And if not, you'll be getting it next year.
Okay.
So somewhat related to that, we've been talking about the need to fix the Jace here. And when the air conditioning kicks on in about half an hour, we'll all feel the reason why. And there's about $10,000 that's left in the capital reserve fund that's specific to Enosburg. The full project to replace that is about $40,000, and we think about 10 of that would come back from Efficiency Vermont and rebates.
Currently, about $40,000, or was 8 months ago when it was last
6 months ago, yeah.
So it could be
It could be.
60,000.
Hopefully not
Let's
60,
hope
but.
No, I know. Right.
So when I get those final tuition numbers and we drill a little bit more into the current year budget, I expect I'm going to call Joseph and say we can get it done this year, use the capital reserve and that efficiency rebate, and we'll find the rest of the money in the general fund budget. So I just wanted to tip you to that. It'll be nice to get that off the to-do list. Any questions on current year budget?
No, but I will, just to Michelle, I've been calling about your pond in the back.
Oh.
So we haven't forgotten it. We're waiting, yeah, I know.
That's like preschool.
Yeah, exactly. So
You're the one in
I have some
office.
calls out just for some estimates. And just because this is gonna come up later, but storm water permitting, and if we can kind of dovetail that at the same time, so has not been forgotten.
So coming around is version the third for your expense budget. There's not been a whole lot of changes since your last version. I updated the assessments based on the supervisory action last night. I've removed a position from Enosburg High School that Joseph, as a resignation form, is not planning on filling. I think budget to budget, that's the only real change. I can kind of walk you through this one quickly to just tip you to the personnel changes for each building. And then after that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay.
So if you go through to page 4, pages 1 through 4 are Enosburg Elementary. You'll see in that FY20 FTE column, we had budgeted 41.03 humans in the budget last year, and that's up to 43.4. The only difference there is really capturing some of those contracted services that we have from NCSS, or that are partially special ed and partially billed back to you from the SU. Because they're not tied to a position in our system, they've never had an FTE associated with them, and I'm trying to put that on there so this is a little more accurate about how many adults you have in your building.
Okay.
So programmatically, there are no changes there. Budget to budget, we're down, I think, a half a day's worth of a para.
Okay.
Pages 4 through 8 is Enosburg Middle High School. The FTE appears to be basically flat. Again, we have brought in those contracted services and billed back from the SU. In this budget, it's one NCSS worker, the SRO. I've added an FTE to that position, and then a little bit of movement on grants. Overall, Joseph is down one teaching position, Joseph and Rachel down one teaching position, one administrative assistant, and up a half a para in this budget. Richford Elementary is page 8 through 12. There's a lot of movement, which I tipped you to before, between Richford Elementary and Richford High School. Again, we're capturing contracted service. I've moved 2 people from the elementary school budget to the high school budget. They were ones that I hadn't caught in the past. We had kept the budgeting in the elementary school. So there are no programmatic changes there. In terms of positions, we've added a 3rd grade teacher. We've added a social emotional coach. And about a para and a half. A para and a half are already in your building. The social emotional coach is not. And I think we went over all that last month. Richford High School is page 12 through 16. Again, the biggest increase here on paper is because I moved those 2 teachers up into that budget. I dropped the FTE for the athletic director position down to a 0.2. We had it in there as a 0.1. Doesn't affect salary or anything. It just seemed more accurate to represent it that way. the SRO, a couple of contracted services, and then in terms of programmatic changes, Beth's budget is actually down a para and change.
Can I add
Budget to
something?
budget, yep.
Did you want to talk about the town?
Oh, we can. So Richford has always been carrying a town administrative cost line in their budget. We have used that in the past for, to help the town offset costs, maintaining the baseball fields and use of the town hall for events. Also for some of these special elections, they've been billing us for election workers for that. So they put in a specific request to Beth. Beth countered that they could just bill us for actual costs, and they were not interested in doing that. So we've got a actually pretty low amount in there that will cover your use of the fields and of the town hall.
And so we used it even additionally this year for a soccer field down there with the other soccer field commission, and I kept saying, like, because there was a porta potty down there, they had to do additional mowing, and I said, yes, we'll pay, just bill me so I can, and they never bill, and I think that they think it's easier just to put it in. Yeah.
The district level comes next, and you'll see some of the changes there are, we're putting tuition costs at the district level now because you're gonna get them for kids in both towns. So that's primarily gonna be pre-K kids going somewhere else. It will be the cost for tuition for the Vermont Virtual Learning Collaborative, which Joseph and I can go into more detail if you need to on that. And then kids going to tech centers other than Cold Hollow, any of the few of these. The rest of that is primarily the board expenses and some of the district level insurance expenses and professional expenses like legal fees, things like that.
How many students do we have going to other tech centers?
Well, it's a rolling average, so the average that we're paying for is only about one kid right now.
So it could be
it's
just like
been-
programmatic.
Yeah, somebody going from using school choice to go to BFA probably in the tech center there.
We've had one that first responder
Yeah.
and culinary.
Oh, right, that's what I was thinking, programmatic, exactly. Okay.
So Nate's budget starts on page 18. Goes to page 20. Again, there's no programmatic change built in here in terms of personnel. He's had a full-time person who is half in local budget and half in grants, and the window where he could cover that person with grants has expired. He's got to use the grant for something else, so we moved that person into the regular budget. And it's Aaron, correct? So coming around next is the big picture with the revenue numbers. Give you a chance for that to come around. If you look at the first page where it starts general fund revenue, I've actually bumped all your categories up, which is good for you. I've increased what I'm anticipating for tuition, Medicaid reimbursement. The state revenue is largely special ed reimbursement, so that's driven by the special ed costs that you have, as well as some of the tech center specific revenue that comes in to offset Nate's salary, the guidance salary, co-op salary, and then they give a certain sort of block grant per kid for tuition assistance. Federal revenue is the money we get to offset the cost of the 2 ROTC instructors. And then the last line, other revenue, is your use of fund balance. And so just, this is more relevant for the Enosburg folks, but 3 years ago, I guess it was, there was a big deficit that the voters opted to spread out over 3 years rather than putting into the budget in 1 year and getting that tax hit all in 1 year. This year that we're operating in now is when the first third has basically come due. Because the districts have merged and because the fund balances were strong enough going into that new district, that debt was essentially erased and you have a fund balance of 91,000. So you don't, that debt kind of goes away with this budget.
Okay.
And you're actually $250,000 to the good in terms of your impact on your tax rate.
Okay.
So in the projected tax rate section, we've got the budget expenditures, which you'll vote on tonight. We'll subtract out the grant revenue, which will be final unless you decide to change special ed expenditures or the ROTC program or something like that that is tied to a specific revenue. Equals your ed spending, which is that 13,958 figure. That figure is up 3.3%. So that's the number that everybody has been kicking around the state as being a 5% increase, or 5% anticipated increase.
So anticipated, but we're at 3.3.
You're at 3.3. The next step of the formula to get your tax rate is to divide that by the equalized pupils. The latest version that I saw shows you down 22 equalized pupils. That feels right based on the enrollment numbers we saw this year versus the enrollment numbers 2 years ago, which is the one that dropped out of the formula. This is the fourth version of these numbers I've seen, and they keep trickling up, so they may move up a little bit more before the tax bills are actually printed, and so tax rates may be different. But I think it's going to be fairly close. And so dividing by equalized pupils gives you your per pupil ed spending, which is the number that we use to compare to other districts in the state. And that number is going up 5.7%. Again, it's because the budget's up and the pupils are down, so that's a bigger increase. That percentage is the number that will appear on your warning.
As a 5.7 increase.
Yep. Assuming this budget passes. The dollar yield is set by the tax commissioner, or proposed by the tax commissioner every year, and then finalized by the legislature in May or maybe June. That number is up 2%, which is actually helping your tax rate. So when you divide per pupil spending by that higher dollar yield, you get an equalized residential school tax rate, which is your household tax rate before CLA, of $1.3592. I think I tipped you last month, Enosburg's CLA is dropping, which is good for everything except the tax rate. And Richford CLA is increasing, which is good for the tax rate and a bad indicator for everything else. But you look down on those next two lines and you'll see what your taxpayers would actually see on the tax bill.
Right.
So Enosburg's would be $1.34, Richford's would be $1.19. The CLA numbers will not change, and again, the equalized pupil numbers may change a little bit, but likely not too much. The dollar yield is anyone's guess. I don't remember it ever getting worse after the tax commissioner puts out a number.
Okay.
Usually the legislators are trying to make it better.
Okay.
It's an election year, so that also can't hurt.
They're making their pitch. Now, last year, I remember when we put out our information to the public, we were very clear on delineating, this is what Enosburg's tax rate was and will be, and Richford's was and will be. That we're definitely going to communicate that, even though it's still we're a district, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what's
I
gonna
think that's
speak.
important.
Even though it looked like to hear it's 5.7, but then to see the tax rates are actually
Yep.
the same.
Yeah, I think people expect to see that.
You think? You don't think?
I don't think. I think 5.7 is gonna stick.
You do.
So you don't think that looking at a 0.0047
Yeah.
cent increase
Well,
in
I
Richford?
think the perception is when they read the article and it's gonna say a 5.7% increase.
However, it's
Because,
the however.
because your tax rate isn't on the article that you vote on, correct?
Correct.
So if the
So
informational
this is
meeting.
the
And if they
importance
don't
of
come to the
communicating,
meeting, then they
right?
won't know that.
So that's
Right.
why,
And
are we
there's
doing
this-
mailings again or not?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Because I really.
We're not
think-
using arrows this time.
Yeah, no arrows. Can't handle it. You know, I think people really care about what's the check I'm gonna have to write at tax time, and if they're reassured that it's level, but no, I know that 5.7 is gonna catch in some people's throats.
Right.
Just to be
Enosburg's
really
gone up
clear.
9 cents.
What's that?
I said Enosburg's gone up 9 cents.
Right.
Right.
Correct.
And Richford's is essentially staying
Staying
flat.
flat.
No, with no doing of
Right.
Right.
any taxpayer in Richford
Yeah.
or this board. Like, it's based on
Both of us.
numbers in the state
But
vote every
9,
year.
up 9
Yep.
cents, but still a decrease from 2 years prior.
It's still going up
Yeah,
9
9
cents.
cents, I know.
So what you just said, right?
Right.
So when they look at your tax bill, it just went up 9 cents per 100.
But I guess what I'm saying is, even going up 9 cents, it's still cheaper. Your tax bill would still be less than it was 2 years prior.
It would be. Yep.
Right.
But it's
So again, somebody who has no money, I care about the check I have to write. And if it's still less than 2 years prior, I'm doing good.
It's
You know what I'm
cents.
saying?
It's 9
Like,
cents more
so-
than last year.
But
I know, but I still feel like I'm saving money.
I don't think the 2 years prior comes into
No, I know.
effect.
So I think one of the things that is so hard is that our funding system is so complicated.
Yeah.
Is that looking at what the equalized residential tax rate is, and then looking at what happens after you apply that CLA formula, and that when we have to report out on those percentage increases, that's really confusing to
Yeah,
people.
exactly.
So I think we had a conversation about it last week when the board was together, just about what does that mean? Is it a good thing if our CLA goes up, or a bad thing if our CLA goes up? So I think, I think that can't be understated, that because Richford's CLA actually went up, that had a really profoundly positive impact on the tax rate for Richford. It says something negative about the economy.
Right.
But Enosburg's CLA dropped by over 4%. So that's having a negative impact on your tax rate, but it is a positive indicator of your economy. So I feel like we have to work to communicate that factor out there to the communities, because it does, you can see by looking at this, the kind of, those 3 percentage points, the kind of difference that this has. It's actually more than that, because it isn't about just the drop, it's about where you are, with Richford CLA being at 113.47 and Enosburg's being at 101.07. It's a substantial difference.
And so just for perspective, to change this projected tax rate by a penny, you would either need to change your equalized pupils by 7, the yield would need to change by $80, or your ed spending per pupil, so either expenses or revenue or a combination of the two, would need to change by $103,000.
That's for one
Penny.
penny.
On the pre-CLA
Right.
rate.
guess my feeling, which I think we already know, is to do our best educating the public and taking a run at it and see where it lands. That's my vote.
I'm gonna walk you through what I did for tuition estimates again, just because I'm making a lot of assumptions and I'm comfortable with them, but you guys might want to consider something different. So what I did was I looked at your 9th, 10th, and 11th graders, and I basically said they were all coming back. So you had
Okay.
51 9th graders who came with tuition bills, and I'm assuming you're gonna have 51 10th graders with tuition bills. For your incoming 9th graders, I sort of making a guess based on the numbers that we have in FNESU's, in NMV's 8th grade class. So I think I assumed you were gonna get 3/4 of them. We've got the 11th graders moving to 12th graders. You know, they've already had an opportunity to sign up with Nate's program, so I think those are fairly accurate in terms of how many are not going to be, we're going to be backed out because of the tech center. For the 10th graders going into 11th grade, it's a guess. I've kind of am making an assumption that we'll lose 3 kids for early college or who will drop out between 11th and 12th. And then I said that Nate's gonna get 16, the equivalent of 16 kids from 10th grade going to 11th grade. So that'd be 30 students. I don't know if that's, feels high, low.
Potentially low, based on straw poll.
I've also assumed that your tuition, the tuition rate is gonna be 16,000. As I've been tweaking the budget, I could move that up, and we do have to set a tuition rate tonight to 16,150, which would give you a little bit more revenue. Your actual tuition this year's, I think, gonna end up significantly higher than that, and I think it was primarily because of the mix of residents and tuition students. And one of the challenges that you guys have and that NMV has is that when an 8th grader comes to 9th grade and their parents are living in 2 different places, we play this game about who gets the bill for that.
You kind of lose out double, because when you were a single district, it was they pay the tuition bill unless the parent lived in your one town. But now we're in a place where they don't pay the tuition bill if the other parent lives in either of your towns. And they're 2 of our largest towns. Just one of those factors that was a side effect.
So if you like my kid assumption, and I threw another $200 on your tuition rate, it would be 35,000. So it's not really, it's not so material.
Right,
It's a third of a
35,000.
cent.
Yeah, so 35,000 out of 103. No,
To get one.
35,000 more revenue of the
More revenue.
four,
to drop
4.5 million.
7, right, yeah. Right.
Where did we lose equalized pupils from? So we're 22 less.
So what do you mean by that question?
So did we, where are we losing students, actual student numbers?
Yes, I think it's actual student numbers from 2 years ago, and I can probably find that. So your October 1 enrollment numbers this year was 1,117. It looks like last year it was 1139. So there's a bit of a drop there. And then if we look one more year out, it was 1158. So the 1158 comes out of the formula and the 1117 goes into the formula.
Okay, we're 11, so what are we now again? 1117?
1117?
Okay.
Could have been a couple large classes graduating and some smaller
Right.
classes coming up.
Elementary school kids are counted as 1.4. What are they counted as for equalized pupil?
1.0.
1.0.
You get a bump up for high school kids.
Okay.
You get a bump up for special ed, ELL, poverty, and then you get a bump down for pre-K.
Okay. What's total elementary school enrollments?
For which ones and for when?
Richford, combined Richford and Enosburg. The last 2 years.
So 651 this year. Uh, 671 last year.
And the early ed, we don't count those, do we count them? Are they?
They're
There's
not
some,
a
right?
full, but yeah.
Okay.
0.4 something. 0.4 something.
Okay.
You never know what I need to have open for you.
Sorry.
I know. And you're saying, let me make sure I got this correct. The state was anticipating a 5% increase, not on the equalized pupil, but on the
Ed spending.
ed spending.
6%,
Somewhere in there.
depending on
Okay.
what you read,
Okay.
where you read it.
And so they use that number to predict their yield. If we come in, as a state, if we come in significantly lower, that yield number we would expect would go up, which would drive tax rates down.
Right.
But I have no idea what people are warning budgets at yet, because
Right.
we're all kind of doing it right now.
Interesting. Okay. What are your thoughts? Thoughts, feelings? Where are we going with this?
What are plans for educating people on what this means?
So we talked on the NMV side about getting the postcard out like we did last year to indicate where they can see their annual reports. We're writing annual reports for both districts. The principals have written those kind of in the same format. I think the most important piece is going to be, there's a flyer that we're gonna put out like we did last year. I think that being as concise as we can there will be important, and I think that strategic use of social media will also be helpful, because that is one thing that for us, our following on social media has exploded with the increased efforts of our communication coordinator. So I think that will be really important. We know historically, people don't often come out to the meetings, and understanding the formula is really hard. It's really hard to unpack, and I think that we're gonna do our best to try to get the word out. It wouldn't hurt if we would be interested in or willing to do some sort of we could video record a talk with a couple of board members, and we could post it on social media. Courtney's very skilled at this point, so if you wanted to navigate this in a way that was proactive and you try to get information out that way, we could make that happen, for sure.
Okay. We should probably do that sooner than later, because our informational meetings went February 20th?
It's either the 19th or 20th, I don't remember which is on which night.
And we're holding it in Richford.
Yes.
And we're not doing an Enosburg one.
Thought we were doing two.
Are we doing two?
We're gonna talk about that under mine, that's up to you, well, you can talk about it now. What do you want in terms of your meeting? Did we talk about that here last
I think it would make sense to do two.
I think it would make sense.
I do too. I thought we had decided that. but-
So your actual annual meeting is,
February
hopefully the
20th at 6.
Okay.
You're gonna, that's the official one, so you'll elect moderator, clerk, treasurer,
Okay.
other business, and then you can talk about the school board seat races, and you can talk about the budget of that one.
Okay.
But the voting is all on town meeting day,
Correct.
Australian ballot. But you've got kind of free reign on when you would want any other additional informational meetings. We'll certainly warn them and promote them, but they're not, nothing official has to happen at them.
Right, okay. Just other than come have coffee and talk budget.
Usually draws crowds.
It does. Donuts. Okay, so when would you like us to nail that down?
Tonight.
So, okay, so let's
I
take
have
a
it on
look.
my agenda to figure out.
So, all right, people, set your calendars.
One meeting a month for an hour, right? That's all our commitment is, yeah.
That's it.
Who told you such a thing?
I don't think I ever said an hour. I did say one meeting a month.
Except for the months where there's 3 meetings a month.
So, for meeting on the 20th, so what do you think about keeping the 20th as our Richford Public Information meeting?
That's
Well, I think
what's
you
the
have to.
annual
You
meeting.
right.
have to.
No, exactly, but not having an extra one in Richford. Right, that's gonna be
Yeah,
a
that's
Richford
your-
meeting? Okay.
yeah.
And so, we could do, if you wanna keep with the Tuesday theme, we could do February 18th. February 18th in Enosburg.
You actually have elementary principal
Oh.
interviews scheduled for that night.
We could do the 19th, go 2 back-to-backs.
We have
Stop it.
NMV that
Stop
night.
it.
Sorry.
Okay.
You just wouldn't have us.
Yeah, you're welcome to
Well,
do
no,
it.
thank you. President's Day, I don't know how that rolls. We could do it.
Could move that impacts that. Oops.
What about, so we have a school board meeting on February 11th.
You could strategically wrap it up earlier.
We could we strategically, we have a school board meeting on the 11th.
In Richford though.
Oh,
And you
we
wanna do
do,
this in Enosburg.
and then you're right.
So I
Okay.
think the other piece is, I'm not sure when they're gonna get their mailers, so.
Oh, okay, so maybe
You
we
don't
need
wanna
to
have
put-
your informational meeting before those annual reports
Okay,
get
so
in
do
your
you wanna do
hands.
the week after and do the 25th? Oh, that's vacation, that might be PG.
You can do it on the 25th, I won't be there.
Okay, what about the 26th? 24th, 25th,
The
26th?
25th is the only day that I'm around town.
Okay. What about that week?
I'm not here.
Oh, you're gone. Are you gone for town meeting?
No, I'll be back.
Oh, okay.
So I have your, on the 18th, if you wanted to reconsider that date, we haven't begun the process for the principal hiring, that closes
Yes.
on Tuesday.
Right.
We've scheduled that out, pretty strategically to finish that principal search before the break. I really wanted to finish after that, but I wondered if your info meetings don't generally last that long.
No, and would you be interviewing at 6 o'clock at night?
You could
be.
shift. I mean,
Okay.
you would be.
Oh,
but
you would be,
We
okay.
could schedule one at 4:30
Right,
and then another one at 7 if you.
right. Yeah.
I
Okay.
don't know how you feel about that. The only other night that we could do it that week would be the Monday.
Do you need Morgan
17th.
in your principal interviews?
What's that?
Do you need Morgan in your principal interviews?
No.
I think we would,
But I need all of you.
oh, that level of interview.
Yeah.
I was thought you were just rolling, I was like, really, you need? Okay.
She was gonna leave you all the way out there by yourself.
I was.
Morgan.
So that, what about that Monday, the
You can do
17th?
better than.
Monday the
no, no.
17th I can do. It's Brett, yeah.
Schedule
That'd be
it.
without.
Monday the 17th.
Wait, I just
So
said
that would
that.
put us at the 17th, 18th, and the 20th having meetings.
Oh, right.
I actually have you could do it without me. I could give you Morgan on the 17th. I have the Bakersfield principal finalist interviews that night.
What do you think? I-
The NMV annual meeting is at what time? I'll have that in mind.
My feeling is that we would need Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's just gonna be like, we're just going to help walk you through the breakdown of what these numbers mean and what they look like.
Okay.
I don't really think anybody's gonna talk like about programming or anything.
Yeah. That's totally fine with me if you want to do it the 17th.
What do you think? What do you think?
Makes sense to me.
Rick, what are you thinking? Morgan solo?
Sure, it's fine.
What's the date? 'Cause I don't remember.
The 17th.
What time?
You wanna do,
Another option would be to do
6,
like a
somewhere around
fast
there.
on the 19th.
is 6 too early, you think?
It should be 6:30 or 7 o'clock. If
So
it's an
after-
informational
if-
meeting.
If after people's dinner
Right,
and
yeah.
everything.
I'd say 7.
7? We know what happens to me after a certain hour. Okay,
I don't feel like 7's too late.
Enosburg.
Being a parent of a little kid, I'm telling, for me, if there's,
yeah,
as a town member, I wouldn't come to 7, but I'd come to 6.
you'd come at 6.
But that doesn't have to be the end all be all. I just feel like 7 is
Yeah.
pretty late when you have little kids.
I personally.
I know.
But I'm open. so I just
Traditionally,
feel
you
like
had it at
that's-
7, right? Isn't that
Have it?
traditional?
Do you have your meeting in Richford on Thursday at 6?
That's it?
At 6? Then let's just keep it at 6.
Wait, hold on.
Oh, what?
I think my calendar's wrong.
I think it's at 7.
It's in my calendar, 6. We meet in the middle and do 6:30?
What time's the Richwood one, 7?
I think it's at 7.
Did we decide that last year, or did you put that in there from last year's?
I put that in there from last year's. I guess we can set it.
I put it in
The
for
date is
6.
the
I
only
don't
thing
know.
that was set.
Was it set?
The date was set, but I don't think the
The
time
time
was
was not
set.
set. Okay.
So you guys can pick.
What?
7 o'clock is fine. I mean, by all means.
I just think we heard a lot of backlash when we did it at 5:30, even 6 o'clock. I think
Yep.
we'd held one in
What if we did
community
6?
backlash.
What if we
Those
did
hours, I get
6:30?
it. That's really.
6:30, I'm okay with that. 7 o'clock is, I think,
Okay.
the ideal time for most people, but
I'm okay with either.
So if we're talking about social media, is there a way to put a poll out about people's interest and what time they prefer?
You have to make the decision tonight because
we?
it has to be on your warning.
Okay.
Let's just do,
7
let's
o'clock.
split the difference, 6:30 or 7? Now I'm hemming-hawing. How about we do 7 and just
Do
end
7,
it at
it's
8?
fine. Yeah.
So
7 to
this
8.
is 7 on
People
the
won't have dates
17th.
exclusively.
7 on the
Yeah.
17th.
Here.
here,
Here.
Are you
auditorium.
keeping it at 7 also?
Still 7 for the
I have
20th.
meetings.
Yeah, I think so.
I do too.
So
When does
Richmond's
town meeting-
meeting is what time? Because I had 6 in my
I do
calendar
too.
for Richmond.
When do town meetings typically start? 7 or 6?
All over morning.
Our town
Wow.
meeting starts
Town
at
meetings are
10:30 in the
during the day
morning.
usually.
10 in the morning.
Not their information.
But voting goes till 7. I almost feel like we have more business on the 20th. I feel like 6 o'clock would be appropriate.
I have 6 on
I
the
think it's,
calendar on
I
that as
think
well.
6 o'clock's pretty early.
Then do 7.
I have 8.
Yours says 8.
8. That's wrong. Let's just do 7. I think that's
All right.
reasonable.
Okay.
said.
On the 20th.
On the 20th as well.
Gets me out of bedtime.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that-
You gotta look at the
The high
positives,
school
right?
or the town hall?
Oh, yeah, where is that?
I
gonna be?
believe, well, you guys can choose, they just pick the town. I would say the high school.
I would say the high school.
Oh, see, I
The
just,
20th.
we've always had it at the town hall. I don't care, it can be at the high school if you want it there.
But just for like traditional sake?
Do you have?
It's always been at the town hall
voting
because it's been on town meeting day
with the-
with the town, the school
Oh,
first.
yeah, right.
Yeah, I know.
So you think it should be at the school?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
Okay.
it's a school meeting.
Okay.
Right.
Check,
Basketball
where-
stuff?
I was gonna say, check your basketball schedule.
I don't have the schedule on me.
You give me one.
Well, come on. All right.
I think basketball's
I
gonna
think
be
it's
done.
late enough, so there probably
Should
should
be
be,
all done by
but
then.
can I check
You know
tomorrow?
what's so
and let you know?
weird? It's when I put in
Okay.
Check.
in my
Should be all
phone,
done, but
that mansion on the
Kevin,
way
the last one
to
there.
There's no boys game that night.
Oh, yeah, you checking boosters?
It's Canada.
I will.
Yeah.
I'm checking. Nelson just sent out an updated boys.
And it's not
When
even
was
close to
the
Canada. This
official-
is like 10 minutes down the road, Canada. Okay,
February 17th is in Enosburg.
17th in Enosburg at 7, 20th in Richford at 7. Okay, what next?
Well,
Nothing.
if you need a couple
So,
other
yeah.
things
No.
to avoid making a decision on the budget, I would just first remind folks that the seats that are up this year are Rick's, Mort's, Pam's, and Amy's. Mort and Amy have to run because they were appointed.
Right,
Rick and Pam are in the regular cycle of being
okay.
done.
Those are due the 21st, 24th, 27th, one of the due.
27th.
24th in my head.
And you can hand those in to
30
the town
signatures from your own town.
from your own town.
Good to get more.
And you knew I wasn't running, correct?
No, there's no
And the-
game on the 20th.
And that you're finding someone.
What?
And that you're finding
And
someone.
then I'm finding something.
Exactly.
So
No
20th
game-
is
No
good.
game on the 20th.
Is there
Okay.
a game here on this?
So, should we, how are you feeling about the budget? Is there any leanings you could give? Yay, nay,
I'm a little uncomfortable with the total increase.
the
Me too.
total increase? So,
What's your happy number this year, Rick?
just remember, it's 103,000
Just
for
like
a
when you buy a
penny.
car and you're like, if I can get you to this rate, will you agree? Before you give the happy number, can I just remind the board about one thing?
Yep.
Would that be okay? So we have made a lot of decisions about budget and spending for a lot of years about reducing because of the impact on the tax rate, and I understand the thinking. The reality is we're running a system and we're working really hard to support kids with really complex needs. And we're doing that at a per pupil spending rate that is far below the state and the county average by far. So you'll see the data in your annual report about per pupil spending. You'll compare it with all the other per pupil spending rates for all the other schools in the state, and you'll see that our two schools are way down at the bottom. So I understand the reaction to try to get the number lower because of the impact on tax rate. Well, at the same time, I just want to encourage you to also keep in mind the importance of us and the responsibility that we have to continue to make sure that we are working to provide equity for our students and that we are giving these principals the capacity to focus on equity and to focus on excellence for the kids. So I want you to remember all three of the factors as you're making the decision, and clearly the decision about where you land is completely yours. I just ask that you keep those things in mind as you're making it.
And so 103,000 would get us a penny, which wouldn't change your percentage.
And can be on the income or the expenditure side.
Oh, okay.
If I did 103
On the revenue?
on the
On the
budgeted
income.
expenditures, if I subtract 103, I think
Okay.
it was like almost 1%.
It is like 1%?
Yeah. So we'll bring it to 4.8 unless I was looking at the wrong piece. So no, it'd be a half of percent.
A
So
half a
that was,
percent.
that number was 5.4,
Right.
and it'd bring it to 4.8, so basically a half a percent.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I just think anything over 5% is really gonna stand out
Right,
this year. I mean, last year was sensitive, and I think this year is still.
I know, but
And
what,
we're in a
will
sensitive
it ever not be sensitive? I
No.
don't think so.
It's
Well, no.
all sensitive.
Yeah,
but-
exactly. But,
But, so you have declining in student enrollment, at the same time your budget's going up $1 million. You know, so
right,
it's best to take small steps.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I keep coming back to what's the tax rate on the tax bill. I mean, I get that. And declining enrollment by 22. Like, that's not, to me, that's not significant, it's not even that's an English class.
22, but it's
Right.
gone down the last 2 years, so.
Right,
But
but,
we've also riffed staff over the past few years as well.
Right.
We're reducing one this year, we've cut positions back, we've not filled positions when people have retired over the past few years and tried to find ways to creatively staff or use grant money to fund some positions and, I don't know if it's always, our students seem like they're always getting less than even a school that's, 20 minutes down the road. That in terms of opportunity and equity and access to education. And so I don't think it's always as neat as just shaving some money off, because that could be the money we need to replace the heating system that makes this thing air conditioned today when it's 20 degrees out, or, it could be the services to support students who really are struggling behaviorally, and we're trying to access that through consultants to try to meet those needs. And or it might be the increase in healthcare costs we have no control over as well. So I know how it feels, but I also know Eric Rivers has shared that he didn't ever think $5,000 more per pupil really was that significant until now he sees a school system that has that, and just how much opportunity that really does afford. And we're still on the very low end of things, but it's a stark difference in some schools. And we're arguing over pennies of percentages, and there are Chittenden County schools that are trying to decide how many kids will get to go on the Ecuador trip this year that's funded through the budget. So it's
Yes,
just
right.
really different opportunities.
Right, and so I think that the problem with the system is the funding mechanisms in the system.
I agree.
So, but that's what we gotta kinda have to deal with, and I agree with you, 300,000,000%. But if you look at the average income of people in this area, it's also way, way below. So I think maybe if you do the percentage that is actually spent on pure pupil spending versus household income, it's probably actually pretty high in this area.
sure, but that's where I come back to, that we have the opportunity to, it's kind of the same philosophy we used last week, where if we have the opportunity to keep our tax bills the same and still afford some of these improvements, then do we do that? Do you know what I'm saying? I guess that's where I am at. But I get it. I do get it. I get it.
So for me, I think we gotta take the CLA out of the equation,
Yeah.
because that's nothing that
We
we
There's
have
control.
to
that
do
they
that.
There's
control.
nothing that we
Right.
can do about that.
Right.
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 Because next year it could swing the opposite for
Correct.
each community, and Enosburg could go down 9 cents and Richford could go up
Right.
12 cents. So I think that's where,
part of what our social media needs to talk about is what that CLA is, and like try to educate folks on the lack of control of that particularly.
I mean, we do talk a lot about like drivers and everything like that, but as far as like, I think in taxpayer-friendly language, like, when this number goes up, this is the impact it has, which has nothing to do with what we've added or taken away.
The VSBA did a video, so this has been something schools have been trying to do for years,
Yeah.
is to try to unpack that complexity and put it into lay terms, because each of those factors has such a profound impact, but understanding, is that a good driver or a negative driver, right? It's hard. So the VSBA, like 3 years ago, tried to put a school funding video. They did it with the little, what do you call them? The
Just the animated.
emojis, animated, yeah. And I thought it was a good crack at it, but I think it might be like 15, 20 minutes long. But they try to use real life examples. They use Maple Run as an example. They use like homeowners in St. Albans. If this happens to your CLA, this would be the impact versus if it happened in Fairfield. So, I mean, we could use that piece to try to get at it. I don't know if a two-dimensional look at it, like just trying to write something to help them to understand it, is going to be, I think the way Morgan puts it in the this line equals this line plus this line, you know what I mean? Like, he's already trying to put it in the simplest possible terms.
But
So we
they
can
may not
track.
know
Right.
what each one of those
Mhm.
means.
Right.
And I think that's where they need the understanding.
Almost breaking it down line by line, what that means.
Right.
Right.
Like the CLA is attached to housing value.
Yeah.
Like
what your house is self.
like your house, like, I don't even think they realize when you say CLA that means
They
what are
definitely
houses being sold for in your
I think last year there were some misconceptions about, if your CLA went up 6%, there was an assumption that the budget was up 6% because they didn't understand
Right.
what each line represented.
Yeah, well, what is even CLA? And why does my tax rate that I pay result in what so-and-so sold his house for?
Well, I think a real question that people are gonna have looking at this is, okay, how come if we are now a merged district, how come Enosburg taxpayers are gonna be paying $1.34 and Richford's gonna be paying $1.19? That's a valid question.
Right.
And you have to understand how that equation, that funding mechanism works to be able to understand that.
Well, I mean, that was the question last year, because Enosburg's tax rate didn't go up and Richford's did,
Right.
correct?
I think we made some
Initially,
reductions to get it so that it did not.
Because we were level 5.
It initially did on the,
And then we made
But
it
on our
work, we worked hard to make Richford's not
Yeah,
go up,
and
and
then-
Enosburg's actually went down last year.
This is directly related to the CLA.
Right, and I think that people asked that question last year, and I think they will continue to ask it.
I agree with you.
Did you say, and I'm not sure if I caught this correctly, that Enosburg's tax rate, Enosburg had a carryover from a past deficit that would have caused their tax rate to go up this year anyway? Is that what you said, Morgan?
Enosburg had agreed to pay back a prior deficit across 3 years, so it wouldn't necessarily have driven up the tax rate, but the fact that it's going away means that there's more revenue available to the
So you don't have to pay it off.
unified district, and it drives it down.
And so, and this is the first of 3 years, or is it all
the
gone?
last.
This budget would have been the second of 3 years, but it's
Okay.
gonna be all gone.
Okay, but so would have it impacted the budget or not necessarily, the carryover?
If Enosburg had stayed separate and Richford had stayed separate, they would have pushed paying that bill off for a third year. So this year would have been a little bit, this year would have been lower than it could have been, and next year would have been higher than it could have been.
So what I'm saying, not very eloquently, is that they might have anticipated an increase anyway.
I think it was already baked in after this year.
Okay.
Directions?
So what's the scary number? The percent increase in ed spending or the increase in the budget?
For me, it's the total increase in the
What's the
budget.
tax
What's the
rate?
total increase?
Yeah, it's not so much the tax rate.
Okay.
The tax rate doesn't, I mean, most of that's CLA. It's a total increase in the budget. It's real quick.
And what's the percentage from last year increase in the budget only is the 5.4?
5.4.
For eight.
And then what gets printed on the article that voters vote on is the per pupil education spending, which is gonna be 5.8% increase.
5.77? Yep.
To get that south of 5%, what's printed, what dollar figure are we looking at?
Which number to get
The,
south?
the one that's printed, the 5.8 per pupil.
You would need to change. I think it's 103.
Which will save 1 cent on the tax rate.
$109,000.
109,000 would get it below 5.
Get it to 4.95.
4.95. What's the feeling of that?
I'm more comfortable with that number.
4.9?
4.99?
4.95.
4.95, okay.
So 4.95. So you needed, Morgan, what from us tonight in order to warn that budget?
I need you to warn what the final number is going to be. So that's going to be the number that starts with 18.
Okay.
The revenue numbers I don't need from you, although if you're going to pick a target for any of these, I want you at least kind of be aware of whether it's coming from expenses or revenue, or give me some guidance on that mix. And then I'll need several motions on your announced tuition, and then we'll be signing the warning tonight.
Okay. So the budget expenditures, that doesn't need to change by 100 because you're gonna, 109 because you're gonna,
The combination
of the revenue
expenditures
and
and
the
revenues
expenditures.
needs to change by 109.
So can we
That
do
just
the
changes the
18?
tax rate, right? And
The increase?
It changes the per pupil spending number.
Okay.
Oh,
I mean, it will change the tax rate, but you could throw it all in revenue, not that I think you should. It wouldn't impact your budget at all, but it would impact your tax rate and the per pupil spending.
Okay. Can you say that one more time?
So
I'm the person who's gonna be getting this information out there. I'm learning as I go as well. I'm being really transparent.
So your per
But that
pupil-
is only gonna help us.
your per pupil ed spending
Yeah.
and your tax rate are going to be impacted by any changes you make to revenues or expenditures.
So time out there for 1 second.
Yep.
One of your biggest concerns was the change in how much money we're spending in our expenditures for our budget. But we're one of the lowest per pupil rates in the area. So what we're doing is just gonna change the per pupil rate, but not necessarily the increase in the budget,
that is what I'm most concerned, that is what I'm most concerned about.
the total.
It's almost $1 million increase.
Okay,
That is what I am most concerned about.
Okay.
But the tax rate, I mean, the tax rate, what's the tax rate up? 4.5 cents or whatever. That one doesn't bother me so much. The difference is the CLA.
right.
And that number, I mean, this number impacts, right? So this number impacts this tax rate number. So for every $100,000, yeah, so for every $100,000 here,
Uh-huh.
or every $100,000 on the revenue side, this will go down 1 cent.
So if we could add $1 million to your expense budget, and as long as we added $1 million to your revenue budget,
Yep.
the tax rate wouldn't change and the per pupil spending wouldn't
Got it.
change, but your budget would change.
Okay.
I was like, you found $1 million? What? All right,
Yeah, I don't think that's
okay. So, direct, so you need, us to motion on the 18,619?
I need a motion on a dollar amount. But I'm not sure that you're there
Have
yet.
it, I
So
don't think we are.
That's what I'm
Okay.
sitting here silently trying to see who all's gonna win.
Guidance on how you want to get to that. number.
Well,
Yeah. So if you want the number that's on the warning to be 4.95%,
yeah,
we need to change 109,000. That can be either reducing expenditures, it can be increasing revenue, or it can be a combination of the two.
I would say it would be a combination of the two. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
However, I do understand that if we increase the revenue and the revenue doesn't come forward, we're gonna be running a deficit for next year. So we can't estimate too high.
Are we doing capital reserve accounts now? What are we doing?
We're putting everything back to the tax rate.
Okay.
I think we probably want to do that for a couple of years until we're all a little more confident in our budgeting as a big group.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
How
unless
much-
we have some huge windfall, but you don't have one this year.
How much went back to the tax rate this year?
That's the 91,000.
91, okay.
So if we took the 34,000 that we might get in revenue for high school, that would leave 75,000 for expenses. that would need to come out.
What about, is this reflected with the conversation we had about programming that might bring out-of-district students back into the district? That is not reflected in here. Would that be something, oh, that would be SU.
It's SU, and I think the concern is more that if we don't succeed in
Then there would be a
bringing those kids
significant
in,
deficit.
then we're gonna
Right,
Increase expenditures.
right.
have trouble with our budget.
Okay, next.
The more students that come to Cold Hollow, that increases revenue for the district.
The more, not exactly,
Okay.
the more Enosburg kids, Enosburg-Richford residents you get, drives up our tuition rate that we built at NNV. The more NNV kids you get means that we can't bill for them.
Can't.
Enosburg can't bill for them, eventually you get to.
Keep selling that big.
So we run a special.
No, I mean, I'm gonna continue to push. We have 2 MVU kids in forestry, and that's one we can get, let's go to VFA, so I can still make another push to recruit some MVU kids. But potentially roll the dice, I don't know, there's grant money, I'm looking at potentially moving a teacher that, to a pre-tech type PACE type class, and I'd like to have that paid for by what's called a time grant. But it's not guaranteed I get it.
Right.
I'd say it's 90, I would say it's close, but I'm gonna roll the dice on that. But I'd love to be able to take a full-time teacher and have a half-time grant teacher like I've been doing.
Right.
It's not a guarantee.
So where are we?
So if you add 34,000 revenue and we find somewhere to take out 70,000 in expenses,
Mhm.
that puts you at 4.95
Okay.
and a budget of 18,544,052.
18,550, 18,552.
18,544,052.
Okay.
I don't think we have to decide at the table where that 70 is coming, right? Just that we know we need to
Just
cut
that
that.
big
in
number, that big
expense.
number.
To tell us
Right.
if it's 70,
Right.
so we know how much we're looking for to cut.
Right.
Yeah. What did you say earlier about like 34,000 revenue?
34,000 in revenue.
By increasing the tuition rate by,
Right, so we have to guess every year what the tuition rate's gonna be.
yeah,
We have a lot of flexibility in what number we pick. Eventually, we true that up, so we don't want to guess crazy high.
Right.
But before we took that $70,000 out, I think we would have announced a tuition rate of 16,200. And when I was predicting how much you were going to earn on tuition, I was predicting 16 even. So I was just throwing that 200 against those kids.
yeah, yeah.
So, do we feel comfortable with that?
Sure.
Yep. Okay. That's where we're landing apparently. So an increase of 4.95 with budget expenditures at 18,544.052.
So if
With an
that's where you're
increase.
landing,
Yeah.
the motion that I'm gonna need is to warn an FY '21 Enosburg-Richford Unified Union School District budget of $18,544.52.
So do we have a motion?
18 million.
18,544,052.
Did I say 18,000 before? I did, didn't I?
Yeah.
I think I did today. Do I have a motion? Come on.
No one
have
wants
to
to
say
take
it out
that
loud.
motion. I know you don't want to wear that one around.
Can't do that.
I will make the motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Next, you need a what?
Next up, I will want a motion to approve and sign the Enosburg-Richford Unified Union School District 2020 annual meeting warning. And I'll have that printed out in a couple of minutes for you to look at.
Okay.
I'll make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Was it Kevin that made the motion?
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna need 3 motions around announced tuition. The first is a motion to announce an FY21 elementary tuition rate of $13,300.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
And then an FY21 secondary tuition rate of $16,200.
I'll make that one.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then a motion for an FY21 vocational tuition rate of $13,200.
I'll make it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, that rate would that tuition rate impact as well? It depends on who's going.
It's also one that we true up,
Oh, okay, right, that's the one rate.
so yeah, the impact is kind of
Right.
short.
Gotcha. Okay.
So the other thing that I wanted to tip you to, and you'll have this in front of you in a moment, is when I ran the warning past your lawyer, he made a suggestion of tightening up the language for your proposed article of agreement
Oh, okay.
change. He felt like the language we crafted was a little vague, and so he's tightened that up, and I will give you guys hard copies to look at in a moment.
Okay.
And the goal is first to check the dates and make sure that we don't have any errors there, numerical errors, but also attend to that articles change and make sure that's still saying what you think it should be saying. And make sure I spelled your names correctly.
This might be a silly question, but the decrease of those expenses raises the per pupil rate,
So,
right?
are we having is the polling at the Enosburg Falls High
I
School?
have 13,958.
That's what
That
Billy
was
just
last
said.
year.
So we're gonna have voting actually at the high school?
Yep.
Seven,
Untitled
nine,
Chapter,
June.
Okay.
which is apparently how.
Oh.
So if it was 14,
Okay.
18,
Per
5.
pupil,
You're
not
gonna
education
vote where
spending.
you regularly vote on town meeting.
Oh, okay, all right.
Rick's gonna vote at the high school here, which is where you regularly vote.
Well, don't, isn't it usually at the emergency
No.
services
Yes,
building?
so that's gonna.
No, it's here.
School.
Town meeting is
Town
here.
meeting is here, but there's,
There has been,
So they're gonna do polling while town meeting is going
on.
live?
Yep, people walk in, they vote.
But it's gonna be here, not at the emergency service.
Right, because
So-
they're gonna need their staff in both places, right?
Yeah. No, because there won't be any.
I mean, they won't need their staff in
In
both
both
places if
places,
they do
right.
that, otherwise they would, right?
Right, so if they know they're voting at town meeting, it's, town meeting's here.
But it'll be a 10 to 7 polling.
10 to 7, exactly, 10 to 7.
So you almost
So
have
what
time
was
to
your
make it when you show up.
question, Colin?
What's that? What, no, my question got answered.
see trip and drive
Yeah.
by.
So no grade shall cease to be offered in a town without a greater two-third majority of the Enosburg-Richford resident and a majority of the vote of the electorate. That makes sense, of the town in which the program may be produced. Yep. That makes sense.
Cut and dry.
Looks good. So we signed this?
If you found no errors, probably take the one in front of the chair and the vice chair and sign those two. I only need 2 copies.
You have a pen, it's not
do.
really working.
Okay.
That's probably enough for me, right? That's all I got.
Okay, perfect. Next, we have principals. So, first on the list is, can I pass those down and find them? I think it's Kelly is the first up. Do you have,
Everything is informational
Okay.
on my report.
okay. Did we get the principal's reports?
Yes, I
They're in
think they
there.
were in there.
Oh,
Get to
I
scroll
printed
down.
it. It's, well, it's way down.
There was a lot of reading into nice materials.
Meetings are only.
They're only an hour, once a month. It's
Yeah.
fine. Just do it. It's fine.
Beth, do you have anything? Nope.
I can find one on my bag.
Michelle?
Oh, here it is.
I don't have anything here, it's all informational, but I do know that we have between the schools a request to continue having students attend school. So I don't know if you want to, I don't know who's taking the lead on it.
If you wanna do it now, we can do it.
I could say the same thing, the only thing, the same thing on my agenda, sorry, that's an action item, which is
Okay.
some parent letters, but
Is it the same letter that I have?
is it all in caps?
Yeah.
Yeah, then yes. And there was I have an attachment with the mom of, she has 4 kids listed and she has one as her step, so I got it.
And this actually covers preschool, elementary, middle, and high school students. This letter, there's somebody in every building.
So you'll be able to read it in their request. But essentially, a family that has been living in Enosburg has moved to Richford, and they want to be able to keep all of their children in Enosburg. So your policy does not allow that, so that's why it's come to you. The board has considered in previous years, if we're closer to the end of the year, allowing that to happen. You have not created an intra-district school choice policy yet. That's something that we said we had the next 2 years to work on. So I would want you to consider policy and potential precedent as you think about this decision.
And the pre-K is not an issue. We have the space, the child can continue there. So, just want to point that out.
So, well, like this. So, same family, different school. Well,
No, I almost think we should go into executive session because I feel like any question is going to be impossible to answer
Okay.
unless we have.
Well,
Oh.
Do you-
how so? Because
If they're going to ask about,
Nope, I'm not. I'm just wondering, when you said you had a letter and you said you had a
It's the
letter,
same
it's the
letter,
same
same.
people. That's what I
And I
wanted to know.
think you have a
Yeah,
letter,
it was-
and it's the same one,
yeah.
Joseph.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So same,
Okay.
one same family
Kids
we're
in all
talking
those
about.
Kid in
schools.
every single building.
That's what I
All
wanted
three
to
kids
know.
here.
Okay.
School district.
So my feeling is that we were very clear in our articles of agreement that we would not allow for movement to occur until we had a policy written. And I don't feel comfortable allowing that to start without without us nailing down specifically how that should work. I feel like that would be opening a huge can of worms if we did it without nailing that down. That's my feeling. I mean, we talked about that this was gonna come up when we made that article of agreement.
Right.
And this is it. And we also came to a determination of what we were gonna do about that, which was to write a policy. So I feel that that's what our next step is that's what we need to do. But to let this go forth in the process would muddy the waters.
it can always empathize with
Yeah.
the family and the circumstance.
For sure.
That's easy in every one of these requests. That when we're really thinking logically about it, you also have to anticipate the precedent that you set if you allow something like this to happen. It's only January, so it's a half a year, and the request is actually for 2 years for one of those cases, and to just continue
Yeah.
through high school in the other case. So
Mhm.
they're making a request that has implications, like Polly said, before you've considered policy. And in terms of the precedent, you could and should anticipate, others will follow
Right.
if you make this decision now.
I mean, our district did just grow. We're gonna have to anticipate that. Now, the high school would be able to act 129.
So you have, in the past, you have made some decisions around the high school piece. So you have the deadline, we're gonna talk about that.
Right.
However, when it's been a situation when the family has moved.
Yeah.
And that wasn't anticipated, you have allowed kids to stay because
Right.
it was a change in the circumstance that they didn't anticipate.
But there's still the deadline for them to apply.
They would have to, like, you could choose the high school student.
Right.
To finish, because you would be waiving the 129, because they couldn't have met the deadline, they didn't know their family was gonna be
Right.
moving.
Yeah.
And then you could say, and here's the application, in order for you to be here next year.
Next year.
You need to do this application.
So you can still do the 129s even though they're in the same district?
Yes, because you don't have a high school choice policy. You don't have a choice policy, period.
Okay.
Once you have that, we'll address how that flow of students will go between, and if there are any. You're gonna have to have procedures for how you determine that.
Okay.
Right.
So there's not a constant flow of, I'm unhappy in this building and therefore next week I'm gonna choose to go to the other. You have to like predetermine what those processes are going to be.
Mhm.
You haven't done that yet.
Right.
what would the impact be on the kids if we let one but didn't let the other three?
Well, one's going to Richford anyway, or that's how I interpret that.
I
Next year.
I don't know
Next year.
I don't know if I know that for the high schooler.
It says he wants to keep
My
them.
instinct is to say that he has been here longer and the request probably wouldn't have been made if there weren't some connection or
Right.
sense of belonging or something here. I don't know if you have any wiggle room with the younger ones at all.
Right.
I think that it's a valid question, but I don't know that you could apply it. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Like,
yeah, I,
it's not the could, it's kind of the
Right.
should.
Because wouldn't it be, it says if the oldest one would like to continue at Enosburg, they would, the deadline's February 1st
But that's for next year.
or next
Right.
year.
February 1st or March?
March.
Oh, for
March
the
1st.
next year.
2021, and we're gonna talk about that in
Right,
July.
right, okay, for the next year. Right.
But you have a couple of different examples where you
Right.
have said
Extended
yes
them.
and
Right.
apply.
Right. Right. Because I feel like there's statute that at least addresses high school movement,
Right.
whereas we have nothing that
Right.
addresses elementary movement. Right.
I wouldn't want to set the precedent for elementary.
No.
I just know how that process already is. And I would want to encourage that right now until we have some policy in place. But I do think the high school, if they can apply for that and that makes sense, it could be offered out.
Right.
Can I see this?
Any other thoughts?
So do they continue where they are until they finish out this year? Or do they stop
I would not
now?
recommend,
So
you
he's
have
going to stay for
6 months left in the year. We've done that generally when we've been like at 6 weeks. I think, again, it's a Pandora's box, and you're gonna, if you make this request, you're gonna have someone next time that's gonna come in December, and it's gonna say, well, you let someone stay in January, and then it's gonna be,
Understand, I'm just,
Yeah.
I also
I
think,
just want to clarify, and my other question is that there is no pre-K apparently open in Richford?
so that's not as much of a point as Michelle was trying to say, because kids can go wherever is convenient for pre-K if there's space.
Okay.
So that part really, I don't think the parent knew that when they wrote it, but we're not concerned about the
And I
pre-K.
communicated
Okay.
that with her.
Okay.
Yeah,
So the main concern is the elementary school.
Elementary,
In the middle.
middle.
And the
Middle
middle
school.
and elementary.
so essentially we'd also have to say that it would be effective immediately or within a reasonable
I
amount of
didn't hear you, sorry.
We'd also have to say that's effective immediately or within a reasonable amount of
I
time.
mean, you could do a
transition.
reasonable amount of time, like,
So a reasonable amount of time could be finishing out this
semester.
week and a new quarter begins Tuesday of next week after the long weekend. It's a natural transitional period. We've done it that way in the past when
Mhm.
these things have come up and we've given them some closure. But I find
This is for the 7th grade.
Are quarters aligned?
And,
Right.
yes,
Okay.
And we would allow the senior to stay? Is that what?
Well, they would have to
Honestly,
apply to do
You'd have
that.
to apply.
He's only
Right.
10th grade.
10th grader.
That's better, yeah.
Yeah, 10th grader is requesting to stay for second semester.
Correct.
Right.
Wait, so
So
for the second
would-
semester, not to stay,
Yeah.
finish out?
Well, the second semester, but then would apply for the Act
For school
129
choice
to
for
actually come
Okay.
under that act, Act 129, school choice. But again, that only applies to high school movement.
I think that's the way we move forward.
Yep. Do you need a motion or anything on that?
just direction.
Just direction, so, would the 10th grader have to apply, or we make that direction now?
I think you make the decision that he can finish the year.
Mm-hmm, and then has to
you
apply.
direct us to communicate that if he wants to go next year, still in Enosburg, he has to apply through 129.
Can I ask a question before I do that? Do you have concerns around allowing him to stay to the remainder of the
No.
year?
So the 10th grader can finish up the year and apply under Act 129 for school choice. Unfortunately, there's nothing that specifies elementary and middle school movement, so they would have to move. And then the pre-K based on availability of space. Yep.
Who did Mom give the request to?
Me, Michelle, Joseph.
I think this is the mom.
Yeah, there's
two.
I just didn't know how it came about.
Oh, I see what you're
She
saying.
came
To
and met
communicate.
with me.
Can the three of you work on communicating together the decision?
I can follow.
Okay. Anything, oh, Joseph.
Yeah, I just have something new, which is a letter of resignation from paraeducator Ludmila Shippert, who has found other employment with Immigration Services. So,
Really?
so
Can you spell her first name?
L-I-U, it's on the letter.
Yeah.
Spell the first name, Polly.
Liudmyla. I'm sorry, Rachel.
Yeah, Shippert.
Were you done? I jumped over you. Okay. Okay.
And her last day is January 31st.
January 31st. Okay. Anything else, Joseph?
That's it.
Oh, okay, great. And so now we have Lynn.
Or me.
Oh,
Maybe.
I do that every time. We should really like, do like a little roulette wheel of who goes first and who doesn't. And you're even cut off on the agenda.
Really?
Yeah.
That's why she missed.
I'll try to be brief.
Okay.
So attached, I think you got the 29-page ADA finding. And then is that on your report too, the ADA finding?
Yeah.
You want me to do it now?
Sure.
Okay, so.
Take it away.
Okay, so, I had to, by the end of this week, I have to submit any facts that are inaccurate, any inaccuracies. I did not, and I have to come up with a voluntary compliance plan by February 17th. And so, I have started that, but I'm not gonna submit it until February 17th, because that gives us some time to look at some of the longer range things that are gonna cost money. So, all the procedural things and translating from Spanish, I can take care of in a timely manner. But the other ones, I'm missing the budget deadline to hand that in to put it in the budget for next year. So I'm gonna ask for a little extension on fixing something because of the February 17th date. We're not gonna get it in next year's budget, so. But there's a lot of things that need to be fixed, like 90 door handles and an elevator and things like that, wash stations, emergency stations, and those things, so.
Bathrooms.
Bathrooms. Parking.
Counters.
Places where wheelchairs can't access, those things, so.
Right.
It's gonna be a pretty extensive, plan. Now, I'm gonna submit it and give the timelines that I think I'll share it with you and look at what timelines they'll accept and won't accept. And then once we get that, we'll have a better sense of what that looks like and what it's potentially gonna cost. With that being said, I just wanna throw a few things out there to plant some seeds about our current reality. One is the fact that that's gonna cost money. Two, we have the Monteith house in that barn, which is there. We have a house next door that is, the price has dropped from $80,000 down to $87,000. And we have some other things that are going on that are just for Cold Hall's sake. Our Ward Hennebel is asked to have a transition out of us leasing the Sugarwoods. So I'm creating in the next 2 or 3 years, we'll be pulling out of that lease and looking to go somewhere else. and there's some opportunity there to potentially build a sugar house either on site, or we do have 90 acres of land up before the dairy center on the left, past the second old chainsaw place. If you guys remember the second chainsaw place. So, so there's a bunch of moving parts. Again, land for sale next to Cold Hollow, the need to potentially move sugaring operation, and a large expenditure for ADA compliance. So that doesn't mean anything. It just means my wheels are turning a lot. Like, what are the opportunities? There's also potentially an armory for sale.
Yep.
It's not for sale. Not for
So-
sale.
I'm not sure what it is, but
There's a lot of people lined up for that armory.
Exactly.
Right.
Not
Do you get everything that's in it?
so.
Be a nice sugar house.
Anyway, I just want, so, I have no actions items, the wheels are turning on what Cold Hollow needs and what opportunities might be available. If there's any thoughts that you guys have and you just wanna stop in and bounce ideas back and forth, have you thought about this or done that, just feel free to do it as a community member, not as a board member. So those are the things that are in place. My next step as far as the civil rights and the ADA is to come up with the voluntary compliance plan, and I'll present that to you what it looks like, and try to get as many numbers or expenses as I can.
So your plan is to try to get an estimate on how much of this, what's the overall cost this might be to come into compliance?
So, I mean, because like I said, I have 90 doors, but some doors don't really lead to anywhere, but I still think I need to replace those too. And I gotta send a lot of stuff back to the person who did the report saying, all right, like right now, my elevator door, it takes like 27 seconds to open fully. It doesn't have a sensor, so it could potentially close on you,
Oh, right.
but,
And it only opens to like 24 inches.
right. And the new elevator is $300,000.
Yeah.
But, so I don't know exactly what I have to fix or what those are gonna cost and what's acceptable for fixing those things, so.
I think, you know, I had this on my report also, and Nate and I we talked a little bit about it, but not in great depth. I think that it behooves us to have a conversation about long-range plans for Cold Hollow. We know that we have had some issues with that building for a while, and there's been a wish for a while to consider, you know, another kind of space for Cold Hollow, and how we could build upon what Nate has there. I think that before we sink what could be quite a bit of money into that building, we should at least have a strategic conversation about what is the long-range plan for that. If the long-range plan is in 10 years we want to be in that building with no construction happening around that building, then I think we don't have a choice. We need to do this. But if the long-range plan is to watch what happens in the legislature this year around school construction aid, and consider if they make a shift there and open that back up, that might be something that the communities want to consider, is looking at either constructing there or looking at, are there opportunities for us to offer it in other existing spaces that we have. So I think there needs to be a forward-thinking conversation. I know you have to write it by February 17th, and I know that you can push it out, but I wonder if that could also be a part of it, that there's gonna be some discussion and thinking around what makes the most sense. I don't know the board's reaction at all to
So
that.
would you like to have a strategic thinking session?
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, when would you like to
Oh,
have
when?
it?
Well, I guess, I would think after I get some numbers.
Okay.
Right, then you have to
So
figure out where to
maybe
put your money.
sometime, because, I mean, we do have to make some decisions on some other buildings depending on what we decide. so.
Right.
Yeah, I would like to think by, again, I don't know if it'll be I'm not sure how that process works once I send my plan in, but at least for now, I can try to get as many numbers and
Are you thinking before the 17th, Nate, or are you thinking after?
well, I hope to have all the numbers and the cost estimates by then. I just don't know when I submit that, whether they're gonna say.
So you have 3 years to do this,
Right.
or you have to do
Right.
it by next year.
Exactly, I don't know what that
Right.
conversation, I don't know what that back and forth looks like.
Right.
But I can at least get the number, I can at least get as many estimates as possible. We have 92 doors, it's about $87 a door, just for door handles. I don't know what it costs to move, little things like moving paper towel dispensers and lowering sinks.
Sinks and tables, and there was a lot.
Yeah,
Flooring.
those things are, I think we might be able to do some of that stuff in-house, but I don't know about some of the others.
Yep.
So, I mean, we have a lot of, as we talked about last night, we have a lot of things that we're considering throughout the supervisory union in terms of space needs. So it could be something that we look at space in general and have some deep conversations about what those implications are, and Cold Hollow certainly a piece of that. When are you thinking?
Probably sooner rather than later.
Before his February 17th?
I think if we did it in March or something like that, it'd be fine if you wanted to. It'd probably be better. And then you'll know a little bit about how much back and forth you have, how much leeway.
How much time I have, yeah.
Is Cold Hollow Career Center part of the wastewater permit or no?
Nope.
Okay.
Well, wait. I don't know actually, because they gave like the address
But isn't
of
it
this.
separated, so it wouldn't be part of it?
I don't know. I'd have to
Because our
look.
campuses touched each other, that's why I would.
But the letter was sent to the Enosburg School District for this section of impervious area. So I don't know if it goes by, I will check. I don't know if it goes by specifically
Okay.
buildings or property.
So, committee, is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, please.
So 2 of you? Could be 3?
Three.
Can't be 4.
3's good.
Volunteers besides Rick?
Did I volunteer?
It sounds like you did. It sounds like you did.
That's what I heard between those words.
No, I'm gonna be like Amy, like, what is this gonna entail? Like, when you say committee, are we talking like a couple meetings to hash this out, or are we talking like what are we
You
talking?
want me to be honest with you?
Yes, I do.
I have no idea.
Oh,
I mean, I think it's gonna be by design of the committee. What is it you're looking to do and what are you looking to get out of it?
I'm not on any other, so you can throw me on it.
Okay.
Really sign my divorce
You're in
papers.
trouble when you get home.
No,
Okay.
don't tell him, it's part of the
Not
regular
it.
meeting process.
Really don't need another committee.
Kevin, Mort, Pam?
I said not.
I'm on enough committees.
Pam?
She's not here, she won't be here.
I
Fine.
should say, yeah, I'll do that committee.
Yeah, sure, put me
I'll
on
do
that.
it. I'll do it. But let me tell
We'll
you.
nominate,
This is good.
we'll nominate Pam's replacement, how about that?
That's right.
Oh, yeah, okay. I don't do the prerequisite.
So, March-ish.
March-ish.
We'll work on scheduling. Okay.
Okay. Anything else, Nate?
That's all.
Okay.
Well, the good news is some of the principals took some things off my agenda, which is really good. So under personnel, we have a couple of resignations at Richford Elementary School. Megan West, 2nd grade teacher, submitted a letter of resignation for next year. And Erica Sherman, there's a resignation from December. So I would ask that the board make a motion to accept letters of resignation for those teachers.
I'll make the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
How long have they been there? How long have they been there, you know?
For Erica, it was her first year. For Megan, Beth, what's your?
This is her 3rd year. 3rd.
So this is, Megan is, I think, moving
Yeah.
away, which sometimes we lose them to. My intention usually is to wait a little bit before advertising, but I think given the candidate pool, I'm wanting people to advertise quickly for known positions that we have right now, so.
What was the position of the resignation? The one you just mentioned?
First grade and second grade.
First grade and second grade, okay.
So we're gonna get those applications out there,
Okay.
or get those, I think they're already advertised. Are they already advertised?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get those advertised. Add that here. You asked at the last board meeting for your principals to consider, because there were 2 athletic director positions open at both Enosburg Middle High School and Richford Junior Senior High School. So they have had a conversation that I would like for them to share with the board.
Okay, Beth and I met last month and talked about exploring capacity, and we came to an agreement that we could not function with a part-time or half-time, reduced from 1.0 FTE athletic director.
I don't have a full-time.
Well, we do.
You
right?
do?
Yeah.
So one thing we said is that maybe a very special person like Chris Brigham, with years of experience and finesse, might be able to pull it off with help
Right.
from certain people. But we do not believe that anybody could do it. It'd be very difficult.
Game in both towns on the same day. There's no way somebody's gonna be able to
Right.
field prep.
Right.
I've
Can't be in 2 places.
thought about it a little bit, like if you had a head and then 2 assistants maybe, but I don't know how that model would
I don't
really
think
work.
it
and I
would
don't
be
know-
any less of an FTE.
And I don't know if it could be.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I think
Right.
Chris Brigham
Yeah.
might have been able to do it with his years of experience with somebody helping him.
Right.
But if it's somebody new starting out, anybody has a steep learning curve. And you're still, if there's a game, you've got to prepare those 2 fields plus fields. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
We watch what Chris does on a regular basis, even now after years of experience, and he's working super hard to get all that done.
Okay.
So Chris will actually get the fields and stuff ready. Could you have custodial staff get fields ready?
They do.
They do in Richford.
In Richford, we only have a part-time person in Richford, and they do a lot of that. The custodians, kids help.
I guess, my way of thinking would be if we could have an athletic director that directed.
I couldn't hear the last part.
If we could have an athletic director that directed, I mean, I don't understand why an athletic director would have to be necessarily at games, you know?
I think that's one of the roles it's the authority of having someone there for crowd management is
And
part of it.
referees and-
Injury management, we have, have watched Chris for a lot of years as a mom of athletes in Enosburg, and he is constantly running between the 2 fields. If there's an injury up here, he's running up here, he's getting the athletic trainer, he's working on field prep. If it downpours in the middle of a game, he's running out to put the dry, whatever that stuff is called, out there mid-game. So it is pretty important for those situations, and I think that for basketball, for example, it is, you have to have someone in charge of your gym with authority, because your crowds, your student sections, your parents, in some ways, the parents are more challenging than the kids, and the referees cannot manage crowds, like they're not allowed to. So I hear what you're saying. We would have to be really considerate of the model so that you'd have 2 people, 1 in each building, who are in positions of authority to be able to manage those things. running simultaneously in some cases.
Chris has worn many hats, and this year especially, he's been very active. He comes to all our school's administrative team meetings once a week, and so the left hand and the right hand knows what's going on. He keeps us informed of community relations, which helps me in my position, helps support him. He is an incredible politician with finesse. He is great at relationship building. So there's so many components to the job. He's well loved. Anyone who's been to the annual dinner that's here can see that our cafeteria and the hallway are packed with people. He knows how to draw folks in because people love him. He's got the right combination that makes for a successful athletic director. He's leaving huge shoes to fill. I think people who know him and love him know he's amazing.
I would agree with that. I think Chris might have been able to do it, be the director with somebody under him. But it's not only, so Chris had the personality and the skill set to do it,
Okay.
but he also had probably the following in 2 communities that could do it. And if you're hiring somebody new, there's a huge learning curve. I mean, we hired a new AD when I was second year principal at Richford High School, and it's a huge learning curve. I didn't know as much about it as I do today. Chris pretty much mentored Nelson. I've already spoken with the AD of MVU about helping us with training, mentoring a new person.
Okay.
I do not believe that you're gonna be able to find one person with the skill set to be able to pull that off.
Yeah.
So do we keep a full-time position and a,
Part-time?
what, we're .2 on the budget this year? Do we keep that at .2 or do we go to .5 or?
Yours is .5.
Well, what I was thinking is that we might leave that the way it is and then hire, I have a couple of people who have talked to me, but I'm not sure that anybody who's talked to me wants to be at every single game. And so I was thinking that one person would have primary responsibilities at Richford, and then maybe we give other people pay them, or however Morgan tells me I can do it, because I like to make a deal, as you know, to be at games, either pay them or pay them a stipend to be the person in charge at games.
And you're gonna leave your field maintenance to your custodians there?
Well, the custodians help. I mean, Nelson did it, but the custodians helped. It's hard for one person to set up a soccer field.
Crooked lines.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, what else do you have?
I sent you out the revised timeline for the Enosburg Elementary principal search. Were there any questions on that? So we, I don't know if you even want to look at it, but I'm not going to send this part around, that's silly. A feedback form for the community. You have gone through it in both the Enosburg and Richford communities in the last couple of years, so I think that both boards are pretty familiar with the process. One thing that I wanted to pass out for board members is this is the copy of the school board questions that we used for principal search last year. So just take a look at that when we're gonna do your final interview after your February school board meeting. So if you want changes to some of those interview questions, you have suggestions, whatever, you can email those to me, or we could talk about them at the next school board meeting.
When did you send out the revised schedule?
After the December meeting, I think. I had some errors on that. I can tell you what it is if you want. Yeah, or I could just send it again tomorrow. Do you want me to do that? Okay.
Can you send it to me too?
It is possible that so I have 2 principal searches going on at the same time. It's possible I didn't. I think I did.
I think you did.
I know.
Oh, wait, I have
You
it.
did it.
You found it? I was gonna say.
December
okay.
11th.
It's in a different
Resolution
email.
Aldo.
Okay.
12/11.
Okay. So there is a leave of absence that I'm gonna ask Beth to talk about under personnel. I have this. Do you wanna give a summary of it? We
Yeah,
can
I'll
pass
just
this
summarize. So, I have a middle school teacher, Kyle Kramer, who has requested a year's leave of absence, due to, a chronic illness that he wants to try to get under control. Can I go into more detail about position, or should I not?
So this is for an Enosburg-Richford position, right? Because it's a classroom teacher. So when Beth says she's like the let's make a deal principal, she's really the let's make a deal principal, and she's always trying to find a way to use her resources in as savvy a way as she can. So I think she's recognizing the request and the need of this teacher to step away for the year, but at the same time, she is recognizing that this teacher might be a match for something she's imagining under grants. So the question I think that she's wanting to ask is, will you consider the 1-year leave, and similar to what we did for an Enosburg teacher last year, would you allow part-time work through grants for that year?
So the part-time work would be paid through grants.
Right. FNESU.
Got you.
So it'd be a different employer.
Got you.
So you would be granting a 1-year leave from the full-time
Teaching
classroom position in UUSD.
to a part-time grant position.
Right.
Maybe.
Potentially.
But just the, right. Like,
There's
you're not
potential
ready.
for it, yeah.
She doesn't have the grant funding yet, but she just wants to be transparent that if he's gonna get this, she wants to be able to consider him.
So the letter states, I want a sabbatical from full-time, but
Full-time classroom. I think I'm not sure that he wouldn't consider full-time in a different role.
Right.
But I think your level of with-itness with a whole classroom versus
Right.
a small group or
Right.
individual is a different requirement.
right. But, so the letter requests a year sabbatical, but with part-time, it doesn't specify that it's grant, so,
No,
You
I
would
think that
specify.
we just want to make sure that, we didn't even know if he needed a letter.
right, okay.
But if we were reducing, we wanted to make sure we were being transparent with the union and with
Right.
everybody that he's the one requesting this for a
Right.
year.
Right.
But he
So-
doesn't necessarily want to give away
But
his
I
position.
guess what I'm asking is he's requesting part-time employment. Do we specify that you can have part-time employment if it's grant funded?
We might wanna ask him to rework
Rewrite it.
that,
Okay.
to just ask for the leave, because
And then, right.
I don't want there to be like, what if your grant funding doesn't
Right.
come through?
Right,
You may not
that's
be able to
why
guarantee.
I was asking if he's requesting
Right.
that part-time employment.
The only action this board can take is whether to grant him a year
Okay.
leave or not.
Right, and I think that's what he wants, but he wanted to be
Yeah.
transparent
Okay.
too with the way he wrote the letter.
But so I skimmed that letter tonight when we got here. Is there something in that that makes you feel like if you approved his request, that it's almost tying you to part-time?
Well, that's why it kind of felt like that,
Okay.
because I'm
So-
asking for a year leave from the classroom, but would like part-time employment.
So couldn't you just grant
Well,
his
that's what
1
I'm
year? Yeah.
wondering. That's exactly what,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. We'll just have to be clear with him.
Yeah.
on that.
You need a
I
motion.
think just be clear in your motion.
Yep. So do I have a motion to grant a 1-year sabbatical from the classroom, which is unpaid? Correct? Correct.
I'll make it.
Do I need to put his name here?
Yes.
And what's the name?
It's Kyle Kramer.
Kyle Kramer,
Oh, it's right there.
1 M.
CRAMER?
Both
K,
Ks.
Kramer.
Oh. Here we go, we're going down the slippery slope. All those in favor, I forgot what I was doing.
Oh.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Next, I'm just passing around, the legislative session has begun, so this is just, principals are gonna get it next week, so I only probably have enough for, I don't remember how many I have there. I promise, I'll give it to you next week. You get a bigger one, just so you know. The bigger offices. So these are just your legislators, so take a look at, I set it up so that you could see based on your town who is representing each of the towns. So if something comes through the legislative session and you want to advocate for something with your legislators, here's all their contact information for you.
Lisa sent out a really nice letter to everybody saying what was going on since they've been back and.
So I got a notice from Corey Parent too about
Yeah, I got that.
petition. Did you see that? Yeah.
And Corey's on the Senate.
Senate, correct.
Education Committee.
Yep.
Yeah, which is really nice.
So I sent out, if there's no question, I'm gonna move on because we're going a little long here. I sent out information about your new FNESU email account. I know there was some panic from folks about, what does that mean? Are we shifting to that? We're gonna start shifting to sending it to both your personal and to this one to get you used to using it. And then on July 1, we'll shift entirely to this account. So that,
I kinda like that.
yeah. Okay. School choice. Last year, so Rick has a way of finding the ambiguity in the statute, and he kept like making my brain go into a pretzel last year when we were looking at this. So I went back this year.
Statute for what, I'm sorry?
School choice.
Okay.
The high school choice.
Okay.
129 stuff. So I tried to make it really clear in my board notes, but I feel like even when I try to make it clear, because it is written in a not clear way
very
in
unclear.
the guidance from the agency, and I went around and around. So I'm going to ask you to set limits on the number of students that you're going to allow in and the number of students that you're going to allow out of UUSD. So last year, I gave you the data that Enosburg set a limit of 15 students in and 15 students out. Richford set a limit of 20 students in, meaning 5 per year, and 20 students out, 5 per year. Okay? So that wasn't a designation that Enosburg had made, and I think that's an important designation, that you identify that it is per year. So you're looking at your cap, but you have to break it apart into your year, so you won't end up receiving 15 in 1 year.
And do you need these to be school specific?
See?
I don't think so. I know that's what I was thinking is why don't you just set a number that but.
I actually don't think we ever got an answer. I think we were gonna ask.
Because
them
if
about
you
that.
each allow 5
Yeah.
per grade per year, and you have 5 Enosburg kids going to Richford and then 5 Richford kids going to Enosburg, does it use that up? Or is it kids going into the
Does
district?
it
or
matter
out of the
if it's
district?
all one grade?
I think it's actually kids coming in, it's kids coming into and out of the district that is the important thing, right?
No, you have to, because you don't have a school choice policy, you still have to account for your Enosburg-Richford inter-district.
Yeah, but we don't have to account for them budget-wise.
Right.
You know, so it's students coming into the district from outside the district that impact our budget negatively.
And I know we don't get the money for them, but it counts towards our per pupil.
Right.
No.
It counts towards your number of students, so
Yeah,
your
exactly.
tuition rate that you can charge out actually decreases.
Yeah.
Right, okay, right.
Similar to the impact of accepting exchange students.
Right. So help me with my thinking around why would it be bad if it was all one grade? What if you had that many?
I don't think it would be bad that it was all one grade. I'm saying the number per year.
Yeah, but per
year?
Not freshman, sophomore, junior, senior,
Oh.
per 2021.
Oh.
Per calendar.
Per calendar.
school calendar,
Oh,
right.
okay, right.
Not per grade.
Okay.
So you said 25 per year.
I said 20. So Enosburg said 15 in, 15 out.
Right.
And Richford said 20. Oh, you said 5 per year. 25 per year.
But what do you mean 5 per year?
5 per grade, is that what you're saying?
So I think the way that it was written was actually in
In
grade
5 per
level.
year and 20 students out. What does that mean, 5 per year? It's in a calendar year, 18, 19. 20 students.
It's saying you can't take 20 that year.
Take
Take five.
I'm not following you there.
Yeah, but that's not a 4-year time period. That's
It
an
doesn't
18,
matter
19.
how many, it's total students.
Oh, that's when you set the limit. Why would you set it per year? Why don't you just say this many can come per year?
That's what we're doing.
So
But what's
5.
20
But you
if it's
have to
5 per
set.
year?
I'm just doing what the
I know, I'm
law telling me I
struggling
have to
with
do.
it.
So maybe
Yeah,
go
so
up
it's
to
only
the
5
first
grades.
part
Okay.
about what I'm tasked with doing is having, and
Yeah.
this was unpacking the language and trying to simplify as best I could. The board is asked to set the annual limit for the number of students allowed to transfer
The
out
annual
of
limit.
each high school. Minimum limit is not fewer than 5% of your resident students, or 10, whichever is less. Maximum limit is not more than 10% of your resident students, or 40, whichever
Okay.
is less.
So that's why I think we just set an annual number of students. Right? Isn't that what it
But it has to be per
School.
school.
That I get.
Right, per school.
It's the per year thing I'm hung up on.
The per year thing doesn't
Well,
make it, it makes no sense.
It makes no
If you just
sense.
X that out.
So
I can
X-
follow 20 students can,
10 can come in, 10 can come out of Enosburg, 10 can come in,
But
10
the-
can go out of Richford. Like, why
I
can't
think
it just
that
read like that?
From Richford's perspective, maybe when they did that, it would probably end up, most likely, if they limited it to 5 per year, would be less than 20 total most of the time. I don't know what your discussion was, but that's.
So I think the discussion was around that, so if you allow them in as a freshman,
Yep.
Right.
They'll
they're
continue through
staying
full-
the whole
Right.
time.
So you're really only allowing a total of 5 new students to matriculate in your freshman year,
Right, But you're
assuming
gonna-
that they're gonna stay for the rest of the time.
right. So maybe now that you're saying that out loud, it was
It was per
grade
grade.
level.
That's why it didn't make sense otherwise.
I think it was grade level,
It had
because
to
I
have
think they
been.
moved
So,
up.
right, just
Right.
the language of per year should be per
grade.
grade.
But that's tricky at the high school level, because they don't, you can
Always
be,
follow a grade level.
right, you can be like a freshman and then go to a junior if you just miss one credit.
Well, the other thing is, we've had a lot, in Enosburg anyway, we've had a lot of people come in to, their sophomore year, they've transferred in, and their junior year, they've transferred into Enosburg, so.
Still clear as mud, sorry.
I know.
It's still
I
clear.
tried to unpack it as best I could. I went through this entire folder again. So it's a number, it's a cap.
Why don't you just say, look at it as far as a building, that the number of Act 129 students will not exceed blank in a building per year. Or in the count, in any given year.
So if it would not exceed 20.
Sure.
But are you saying that you're gonna allow 20 in year 1? If you allow 20
Right.
in year 1, you can accept no more for 3 more years if they happen to all be freshmen.
Right. So that's where the per year, so maybe
Right.
say like 5 a year, not to exceed a building capacity of 20. 5, that's 4 years. 5, 5, and 5.
Because I'm not sure that complies with the law.
What is the law say? I don't know.
And what is the minimum, so
right,
it's
minimum is at least 10.
We met the minimum
allowed to
last
transfer
year.
out of each high school? So is Enosburg's number going to be different than Richford's number because based on population in each
Of
building?
resident students. So I don't have a concern if you want to say 20 in, 20 out for each of your buildings and
Five.
say five per year,
Per year.
and then if
Right.
we get a pinch and need to interpret, I can try again for clarity.
Yeah.
This was an
Yeah.
attempt at clarity,
Yeah.
just so you
Right.
know. This is much clearer than
Okay.
the first one.
Okay,
Let's do that and move on.
yeah, let's
Okay.
do that.
Yeah.
So 2020,
2020.
5.
That would mean that we see it clearly.
Until the issue comes up.
All right.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you to make a motion to direct the superintendent to write a letter to the teachers' union indicating the board's contemplating a reduction in force. Something you do every year, in case we have an issue with passing the budget and that we need to, in case we have to reduce.
We'll make that motion.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
You already did all of the annual meeting discussions. I wanted to tip you that I'm going to the AASA National Superintendent's Conference in February. So I'm going to be traveling to the conference on the day of your February meeting. So I'm actually gonna be in the air, so I won't be here for that meeting.
Is that
So-
the 11th?
What?
11th?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm fine with you not rescheduling. I can send someone with my stuff unless you feel like the timing of it before budget. I'll do whatever you ask. If you want us to reschedule or if you're just good with me prepping, most likely
keeping it.
Morgan.
Just keep them prep.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we just need to shift back to board, but you have several things under your
Yeah.
board business and you have to take up your students, that were here earlier.
Correct.
And we received an email from one of the parents that was here.
Yeah, we saw it.
Just for clarity before we move on.
Yeah.
It says here that meeting on the 20th is at 6, but we've decided it's at 7.
Yes. In my notes, yeah.
Okay, so board business. First is,
Morgan, you're doubly sure, right? We didn't set a time at our, for,
I'm doubly sure, but I will check the minutes now.
okay.
okay.
But we didn't set a time at last year's organizational meeting.
Right. So, next, fundraising.
Oh, that's me. So
That's you.
I'm gonna be really quick. So this is a concept idea. So I go to the supervisory union building, I sign the warrants every week, and I see all these funds and fundraisers. So there's money going in, money going out. Nobody really understands what is actually, so, you know, what comes out of the budget for basketball, what comes out of the, you know, activities fund, basketball activities fund. And you look at, you know, how much, you know, these students fundraise, you know, they might sell $5,000 worth of stuff, $4,000 goes to whatever the, you know, pizza place or wherever they happen to sell them, and they end up making $1,000. So, my concept anyway would be to make just one giant activities fund and try to limit fundraising as much as possible. Or fundraising in the traditional sense as much as possible. So, and again, this is just an idea thing, so maybe you just have 2 fundraisers a year, you know, you pick whatever seems to, the fundraisers that make the most money, but we would do it district-wide. So from elementary through senior year, monies for that would go into this activities fund. And then how you distribute money out of that activities fund, I'm not entirely sure how all the mechanisms and stuff for that. But it just seems that there's ought to be a better way to do this for both equity, and I think that, you know, as a parent, I would almost rather, or even as a community member, I would almost rather just
Give the money.
Write a check.
Right.
Give the
yeah,
money.
write a check. I don't want most of the stuff anyway, you know, so
Right.
I would rather just write a check for, you know, the $20, not get the candle and just put it into the fund. And I also think that we might be able to get some, you know, you could sell, you know, I don't know how you do it, but you can have sponsors maybe that, you know, we can set up a PayPal account or something that, you know, you could have a bronze sponsor or a silver sponsor or a gold sponsor for the year. And that eliminates a lot of the fundraising. I also think that there are activities that are able to fundraise more money just based on a number of students that they have. I think that you have students that are less fortunate than others that have a harder time fundraising for things than other students, and I think that this might try to eliminate some of that kind of stuff.
I have to say, when
But
you
that's just
first
a-
were
that's just a
speaking, I was like,
concept.
what in the what? But now the more you're talking, I like it.
Yeah.
At first I was like, my first thought was it's gonna be a bloodbath for those funds.
It would be.
And then I was-
It would 100% be a bloodbath.
Yeah, and so then I was thinking, but the more you're talking about, there is a definite inequity about who gets to fundraise and who doesn't.
Yeah,
You know, and so I think that would eliminate that, and you're completely right about there's probably a huge portion of the community that would just rather give the money.
Well, there's a couple things at play here, and the inequities is one thing. I think the leaders need to really, I know, even in my building, we really looked at what businesses have we hit up.
Yeah.
Because there's a difference between, you know, selling pizzas and cookie dough and candles versus the FFA fishing derby that we're hosting coming up.
Right.
You know, there's a difference in what that looks like and versus getting
Some
donations
learning
for a raffle.
versus,
So
right.
I do think there needs to kind of be a, you know, some time where we can look at, all right, who are we, what type of burden are we putting on businesses and parents? How that plays out, I think, could look different, but I think there at least needs to be some, you know, a look at what are we doing and who's doing it.
There might be a way to do a little bit of both, like some of what you're suggesting. I've also seen some schools that have just kind of humorously and or cleverly sent start of the year flyers home and said, like, check this box, like if you never want to receive fundraising information and you're sending in a check so that you never have to see a single fundraising flyer come to your house, like that's fine. And like there are some communities that are doing something like that too. Essentially, like, I'm opting out, like, here's the $100 I would have spent on the junk, just take the money and apply it towards your, you know, whatever you need.
But then do those students get something different than the parents who can't?
But you end up, I think, with similar equity issues.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are people who have like 100 people around their Thanksgiving table buying cookie dough versus kids who
I also
don't.
know that if the snowboarding team doesn't sell pizza, I don't know why I would feed my husband with them.
Although I am interested in some of those cups, I have to say.
But I don't know, I think there could be some ways we could look at that, because I do think you're right. I think there are times where like, sell, and some families are just like, let me just send a check.
And the other thing too is, I think that all these kind of, the extra stuff, you know, the $5,000 per student difference that Eric was talking about is in the extra stuff.
It is, sometimes.
Sometimes, yeah.
So, trying to get to the extra stuff somehow, I think is pretty important.
I think there's two conversations here, 2 points. One is how do we fundraise, and the other is how does that get dispersed, or how does that?
The bottom line is, we could do no fundraising, estimate how much money the fundraising brings in each year, and increase the budget by that amount.
So, I mean, I wouldn't, you know, I certainly wouldn't, again, I think, so if you're gonna have an activity at a school, I think you need to look at the activity, you know, and decide what's the minimum amount that you need to have to actually run that activity. And that should go in the budget, you know. To me, that if you're gonna have an activity and run it properly, it should be in the budget. But for the extra stuff, you know, so, you know, the snowboarding jackets for the, you know, maybe the snowboarding jackets for the snowboarding team, you know, maybe that comes out of that activity thing. Or, you know, you have, you know, a student somewhere that achieves something in a subject, and, you know, they want to go to someplace and compete or do something, that comes out of that activity budget. That kind of stuff, I think. or at least that was kind of my thought.
What about class trips?
So,
Yeah.
Because we have students fundraise for themselves individually for those.
yeah, and I actually think that I would probably
In my
have the class,
school,
I would actually have the class trips come out of
that
that
too,
activities fund if they are non-educational.
And a lot of times when kids fundraise for themselves, I mean, there are some kids that just can't get out there and do it, like, you know, Rick said, the inequity.
Yeah.
So there were certain things that I think over the years, like our parent group, the actions group at the elementary school, when they first initially started it, was to kind of raise money to send kids on field trips. So, and also it was to help support that, the additional science program, now it's 4 Winds, but I think at the time it was ELF, I believe. And in the end, both of those things were moved to the regular budget. So I think it's gonna vary per building, what kinds of things are, out there that people are fundraising on. And maybe that's a task we could, as principals, sit down and kind of talk about at some point, just listing what they are. Yes.
Well, that's what, I don't know how many different funds there are, but it seems to be a ginormous amount.
Oh my God, we
And I
sell so
think-
many donuts.
Yeah, exactly.
And some of it is,
Frankly,
some of it is unclear actually of what is
$27,000
supposed to come out of the budget and what's supposed to come out of the fund.
Right.
That, I know that has happened.
I think one of the examples, and I'm just gonna make a real example that I'm aware of, is you have a capacity of like a soccer team to raise money when you have 25 kids on the team, and those, a lot of times that gets used for extra stuff, for equipment or extra things. But then you have a smaller snowboard team who, just to go to states, they right now are having to fundraise to pay for hotels and things like that. So I think what you're saying, Rick, is if it's a function of, in order to run it, this is an expenditure. I think one of your, I think what I'm hearing is it makes more sense to just budget in. We know we're gonna need this much for lodging. That should just be embedded in our budget. But if you're doing something extra, that should be something that you fundraise for. The
Correct.
one
Like they
wonder that I have is about fundraising was something that, as a principal, I can remember, boy, there's a lot of work that goes into fundraising and getting participation. I wonder what your participation levels would look like in those fundraising activities if it wasn't evident, if the students were fundraising for an account and they weren't able to have that.
Like
that-
8th grade trip or.
Right, like what's the
something,
target
what
that
it
you're
is.
fundraising for? So if they were, everybody has to fundraise because it's going into this activity, I wonder if there'd be a difference.
I think it would be.
I do too.
And I think that some of the fundraising activities, people think of as a service, or it's something fun that they do. Like, for example, the Mr. Falcon, Miss Rocket contest, we used that as a fundraiser. We were not selling food at games, and usually seniors do that for their senior class trip. And I had parents like, how come they're not selling? We were gonna buy food. We like it when they're selling food out here. So some of the fundraisers are town activities, like the carnival, the PTO carnival at the elementary school. People look forward to those events. So I agree with you. I think it's a larger discussion about what type of fundraising we
Yeah,
want to
and
do.
I wouldn't limit,
Right.
I was just focused more on the selling pizza thing, because that's what my life is right at the moment, but, I guess my concern more might be, where does that money go after that money is fundraised? So you have a bake sale, rather than having a bake sale for X, you have a bake sale that goes to this.
When these teams are, like, I know, like, if it's for a specific thing, what if it's for the, like, soccer team in general? Do they know what they're getting out of it? Or is it just rate, so
Yes.
they have a target?
Yeah.
So there's a little ABA there, Amy?
Yeah, it's happening, analytics.
So I think that the larger discussion I'm wondering is if it's about unpacking what are the things that kids should have to and shouldn't have to fundraise for.
So I think
Like,
that's step one.
Step one is unpacking. They shouldn't have to be fundraising for the hotel room. States, like no other team has to fundraise in order to be able to just go to states. It's different because it has to be an overnight because it's 3.5 hours away, I think. So maybe unpacking some of those things. I think maybe unpacking the types of fundraisers we do and looking at it through the lens of, is this a good or a service that you're providing to the community? And then which type of fundraisers are we asking the community to support us in? Like the raffles where we're asking for gift certificates and things like that. So I wonder if looking at like all the different ones, and we might identify that there's 7 where we're asking people to give us gift certificates just in the ER, and those are the same businesses that we're hitting every time. So I wonder if that's part of unpacking it, and then from there looking at if there are other steps we can make too.
Yep,
Does that sound like an okay place to
that's a good place
to
to start.
start?
Yeah, for sure.
I like that a lot.
All right, what'd I say so I can jot it down?
Okay, Monteith House.
I think we table that discussion.
Until we get. The only thing about tabling, and the only thing is because I've been approached by the Enosburg Recreation Department, is that the town is doing their budgeting at this point in time. And so, I've tipped them that there are expenses being incurred at this building that ideally are not going to keep coming out of Cold Hollow's budget. So the budgeting process needs to know if and what kind of increase in money, if there's an increase in money. Like there's some questions there, so I don't know how to communicate.
We are undecided at this time.
They love that when building budgets, don't they, Morgan? Okay, undecided at this time, so we're going to table that discussion. Is that what we're doing?
Table and just
I
wanna
know
know
what-
when you want me to put that back on the agenda.
April.
After the March committee meeting.
The March committee, okay.
Sounded like Nate needed a parking lot too earlier.
Well, and so I guess that's the question. I've been very clear, like, there are some options. Some of them might be good and some of them might not be bad in reference to the Monteith House. But the contract is up in June. So,
Oh, how many days? I'm wondering if we put a clause in there if you have a discussion and you have some things to consider. If one of your considerations is not to renew that lease, is there a clause that says how many days notice we need to provide?
I'm gonna have to look at the Monteith, let me see.
Because if it's 60, you need to talk about it before April. Well, June 30th. Up June 1st or July 1?
Let's see. Okay, let's see. Do I have it somewhere? I have it somewhere, I just have to find it.
Morgan has it.
There.
Okay, oh, there it is. I found it too. What you got? Actually, that's not it. Agreements.
Oh, there's no automatic renewal.
No. There is no automatic renewal. And is there a clause in there for,
If owner in its sole judgment determines that renter has breached a term of this agreement, owner shall have the right to terminate this rental agreement immediately.
okay. So,
But there's nothing,
So
you
April
would have
should
to
be
find a
fine.
breach.
but as far, so, okay. So as far as money. Okay.
They can fix whatever they want.
Not if they're gonna be out in July. That doesn't make sense.
It's a great time for roofing.
Yeah, I know.
You're right. Just kidding.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then next is
Stormwater.
stormwater permitting. So
So I have reached out to the state of Vermont regarding our, somebody to talk with us regarding the stormwater permitting and the early adoption grant that we may want to pursue. And so they said that they would be happy to do a conference call with both the permitting guy, or the person who's knowledgeable about the permitting, and then also with the grant people. So I thought it might be better than to try to organize a conference call for somebody at like 6 o'clock at night, that I tasked Rick to give them a conference call, ask all the questions, and then report to us what he found. How do you feel about that?
Sounds good to me.
That's good.
Are we signing Rick up for stuff? Because that sounds great.
That's it, I already did it. I took care of it last night. I forwarded him all the information. Okay, so then our next meeting is February 11th. Any other future agenda items? Yeah.
You have.
Oh, and then we
one
also.
For tonight, you have two, one is, Pam, we love you and we would love for you to stay on this board, but it sounds like Pam is not running for a board seat. So it would be nice if there was some brainstorming that happened, because before your next meeting, petitions are due.
Oh, right.
So you are, maybe you want to beat the bushes. I think I shot an email out to Beth and Kelly to start thinking.
Of a Richford.
Right, to see if there's interest. We know there's tons of fame and glory and all kinds of money for being on the board, but.
It's only one meeting a month for an hour.
One meeting a month!
One meeting a month.
I can send out some social media stuff. Don't worry, it's fine. Sure, Ben could put out a statement.
I mean, it would be great if somebody ran and was on the ballot, so that you're not
Texting someone.
relying on an appointment after the fact or a write-in campaign.
Texting someone in the middle of their dinner.
Or texting someone in the middle.
Yeah. Go and get down here.
What you doing?
Get down here right now. Okay.
Something to think about.
Think about it. Okay.
And then what are visitors? You need to go into executive.
Yes, we do need to go into executive. So do I have a motion to executive?
Yeah, so talk to Josh. Awesome.
Thank you, principals and director.
All in favor?
Josh.
Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Perfect.